Chapter 605. You don't know how to appreciate favors. The two people on the opposite side hadn't expected that Jiu Duxing would attack without saying a word. So, they shouted angrily at the same time, and pulled out their swords to meet him. Jiu Duxing snorted. His body suddenly accelerated, and he finally opened his mouth. Then, he coldly shouted, "I am the Emperor of 10,000 Sword." His body suddenly turned into a wisp of flowing light. Those two Emperor-level experts were originally full of confidence. They thought that they were both second-grade Emperor-level experts. So, wouldn't it be easy for them to deal with a guy who had just broken through to the Emperor level? A sense of contempt rose in their hearts when Jiu Duxing moved. They thought, is he a sword emperor? He is full of vigor. But, his speed is too slow. However, they didn't expect that Jiu Duxing would suddenly accelerate in the air as soon as this thought arose in their mind. Both of them were startled at the same time. So, they quickly changed their way of fighting the enemy. They moved from left and right to the front. This was their best joint attack method. One in the front would block, and the other would kill. This method had always been successful in every endeavor. However, Jiu Duxing coldly said 5 words like a monarch descending to the world, "I am the Emperor of 10,000 Sword." The two almost laughed out loud. "You are the Emperor of 10,000 Swords with this speed. Don't you think that the wind will cut your tongue?" However, both of them were immediately horrified. That was because Jiu Duxing's body had suddenly accelerated for the second time after he had shouted these 5 words. Moreover, this speed was several times faster than his previous speed. The two of them only had enough time to block with their swords. Then, they heard a crack sound. Jiu Duxing was like a hurricane mixed with a thunderstorm. He had already rushed past the two of them. He didn't even turn his head. He brought along a sharp whistling sound as he quickly disappeared into the forest behind the two of them. A rumbling sound echoed. 70 or 80 big trees fell down where Jiu Duxing had passed through several hundred feet behind them. Dust filled the sky, and covered the direction. The two of them remained motionless. A long time passed. The one in the front tried to move his hand. It seemed that he didn't have any problem. So, why did I feel cold just now? Therefore, he turned his head to look at his brother, and conveniently asked, "Are you okay?" The Emperor-level expert behind him couldn't help but smile, and said, "He is only fast," but before he could finish his sentence, his eyes suddenly widened. This was because he clearly saw that his elder brother, who was originally facing away from him, was about to turn around and talk to him. Moreover, he had already said, "Are you all right?" Then his brother twisted his neck to look back, but he clearly saw that when his brother twisted his neck to look back, only the top half of his neck moved, but the bottom half of his neck didn't move. He just twisted his neck like that. The two halves of the neck were like a millstone that had fallen together. Someone pushed the top, causing the head to turn. However, the millstone itself did not move. At the same time, as he turned, a faint red line appeared at the joint of the upper and lower neck. He stared at his elder brother in shock and raised his hand. You, that Emperor expert turned his head and looked at his brother. He frowned and asked in a puzzled manner, "What happened to me?" He had said the first 3 words when a pillar of blood suddenly pushed his head up in the air. Then, he said the last word with an astonished look on his face, "Are you angry?" The Emperor-level expert behind him screamed in alarm. Then, he felt that his neck was sticky. He touched it with his hand, and couldn't help but scream in fear. He then lowered his head to look. But, blood suddenly spurted out of his neck when he lowered his head. His head fiercely rushed forward, and his eyes saw a big tree coming towards him. Puff! His head heavily knocked against the tree. His train of thought came to an end at this point. These two are extremely unlucky. They wouldn't have been killed so quickly even if they weren't Jiu Duxing's match with their real cultivation and martial strength. In fact, it would have been very likely that both sides would have been injured if they had fought for a while. Moreover, they wouldn't have had to die. But, they misunderstood one after another, and, these misunderstandings have cost their lives. It was Ao Qingyun and Ao Fengyun's decision to deal with Jiu Duxing. The Ao brothers have come out this time. Each of them is full of ambition. How can they replace Ao Xieyun's position if they don't accomplish something? Therefore, the brothers didn't say it clearly. But they had set their sights on the Jianghu. This is a big pie in the sky. Moreover, it's a God-given opportunity. This is a chaotic situation. I will become the next clan lord of Ao clan as long as I can obtain enough benefits and show enough means. And this is nothing more than strength, power. Therefore, I must rope in some forces for my own use. And I can't look for the OU clan alliance. They are my enemies. So, I will be scolded to death by my ancestors even if I succeed. Moreover, the clans outside the core of this storm don't feel that it's urgent. So, they aren't in a hurry. So, I would only look for them to wrangle. Therefore, I can only choose one clan from Xie clan, Jiyu clan, Luo clan, and Dong clan. And Jiyu clan is the weakest among these clans. In other words, Jiyu clan is in the most dangerous situation in this Jianghu storm. Therefore, Jiyu clan must look for a backer. The so-called alliance won't be of any help if they are attacked. Therefore, I must first pull Jiyu clan over. Jiyu clan is the weakest clan. But it's not a weak force for me. In fact, it's equivalent to double my strength. Moreover, it's a good start if I succeed in my first attempt. Ao Qingyun and Ao Fengyun are fighting both openly and covertly. But they are on the same side in general. That's because these two are blood-related brothers. Therefore, these two brothers hit it off and decided to deal with Jiyu clan. They will succeed once. And the key to deal with Jiyu clan is Jiyu Duxing. That's because Jiyu Duxing is basically the master of Jiyu clan at present. Moreover, Jiyu Duxing has a special identity. He is the second master of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. And there's a good chance that Jiyu Duxing could pull the entire Heavenly Armament Pavilion under his command if he joins them. At that time, the prospects will be very good. Therefore, these two brothers didn't discuss much before they decided to attack from the front and the back. They would capture Jiyu Duxing first. Then, they would talk slowly. However, they didn't expect that Ao Fengyun would dispatch 3 king-level experts. And they were all killed by Jiyu Duxing in one move. This made Ao Fengyun embarrassed. Moreover, they followed the principle of enjoy your blessings, and bear your misfortune together. Everyone will suffer misfortune together. Therefore, they spread the news. Strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with this statement. Emperor-level expert is Jiyu Duxing because he is a sword emperor at present. So, a low-level emperor-level expert is dispatched to deal with him. But emperor-level experts are different from each other, and this statement had seriously misled Ao Qingyun and the 2 emperor-level experts who are now dead. Emperor-level experts can't deal with him. This means that emperor-level experts can deal with him. Ao Qingyun felt relieved when he saw this. Emperor-level experts can deal with him. So, wouldn't I be able to capture him alive if I send 2 emperor-level experts? Therefore, the 2 emperor-level experts came out to rob him with full confidence after they were misled. They were misled for the second time when they saw Jiyu Duxing so young. Then, Jiyu Duxing moved, and misled them for the third time, too slow. Therefore, the 2 of them looked down on him. So, they naturally weren't willing to go all out. But, who would have thought that Jiyu Duxing would accelerate again at this time? And he would accelerate again. His speed had increased to the extent that they couldn't react in the blink of an eye. The Black Dragon Sword has become one of the best divine weapons in the world after it has been modified by Chu Yang, and their heads have been chopped off. The 2 Emperor-level experts didn't even have the time to unleash their domains. And they died in a daze. It could be said that they had died an extremely wronged death. And they had died in an extremely aggrieved manner. Jiyu Duxing had already disappeared without a trace. Ao Qingyun had come out with the people who had been lying in ambush. He was still faintly angry in his heart. He wanted to ask, 2 Emperor-level experts were here. So, why did they let him go? Why didn't they stop him? Then, he saw the scene of these 2 heads falling down. This pampered Ao Qingyun was struck dumb like a wooden chicken. He only felt that his brain was in chaos. How can this be? 2 Emperor-level experts were dealing with one person. And their heads were chopped off so neatly. In fact, I didn't even feel anything. How can I speak when my heads have been chopped off? How can I still move? What a fast sword. The corner of an old man's eyes twitched beside him. He had a feeling of fear and trepidation. And he felt a lingering fear in his heart at the same time. This old man was a 7th grade Emperor-level expert. It could be said that he was one of the few experts in the upper 3 heavens. But, he asked himself honestly, I would have been seriously injured if I hadn't been misled by the words Emperor-level expert is a match for him. And, I would have been caught off guard by this sword attack if I hadn't been killed. Moreover, the enemy could have calmly left. This sword attack could have severed the human body's meridians. And, it could have left the meridians of the human body in their original state of healing. And, it could have continued to provide the body with vitality. To what extent is this fast? And, to what extent is this sword sharp? Third young master, we can't deal with this Jiu douching. This old man hung his head dejectedly. This old man suggests that we shouldn't make an enemy out of him. This man isn't even 20 years old. And, he has reached such a realm. So, if we make an enemy out of him, and, if he can grow up, Ao Qingyun didn't think this way. He pondered and said, who do you mean to say that he can become a monarch-level expert? Or a saint-level expert? Saint-level expert, it's hard to say. However, becoming a monarch-level expert isn't difficult for him. That old man hesitated for a moment. Then, he replied with uncertainty. So, wouldn't we have a subordinate who is at least a monarch-level expert if we can subdue him? Ao Qingyun's eyes lit up. A subordinate of a monarch-level expert? Subdue him? That old man was startled. Is the third young master still thinking about this? Can't he understand what I mean? It's very likely that Ao clan will be destroyed if we offend such a powerful enemy. I obviously know the pros and cons of this. But, a person can always think of a way. Even a supreme-level expert has a weakness. Let alone an insignificant sword emperor. Ao Qingyun waved his hand disapprovingly. A man will always have conditions that he can't resist. The old man forced a smile. He touched his nose, and no longer spoke. He thought, you must be able to afford such conditions first. Chapter 606. Go and look for old master. That bastard is purely trying to trick us. Ao Qingyun's complexion changed. He finally remembered this matter and said, that bastard said something about emperor-level experts being a match for him. But, he made me lose 2 great experts. This is preposterous. The old man forced a smile and thought, you are his competitor. Who else would he trick if not you? Ao Qingyun had already come to look for him before he could go and look for him. Net. Third brother, how was it? That little guy was very difficult to deal with, right? Ao Qingyun's white clothes fluttered in the wind as he spoke in a handsome manner. Then, he found the 2 corpses. His eyelids twitched. This, what's going on? Didn't I warn you? How come? How come such unnecessary casualties have occurred? The blue veins on Ao Qingyun's forehead throbbed. Old master, you are too despicable. What kind of warning was that? That was purely a trap, okay? Ao Qingyun's complexion changed. Third brother, what you're saying is meaningless. I warned you with good intentions. But, you didn't do it. Ao Qingyun snorted. He was about to speak. But, he was stopped by the old man behind him. The 2 brothers looked at each other. Then, they fiercely snorted from their nostrils. What do you plan to do with the Jiu clan? Ao Qingyun knew when to stop. So, he asked in a modest manner. I naturally have my own plans, Ao Qingyun replied angrily. Third brother, do you mean that you want to break up with me? Ao Qingyun narrowed his eyes. Third brother, both sides benefit if we cooperate. And, both sides lose if we don't cooperate. You know this. We brothers are born from the same mother. So, why should we harm our friendship over such a trivial matter? Ao Qingyun snorted. He thought in his heart, we are the weakest among all the people who have come out this time. So, it would be inappropriate if we were to separate. He had no choice but to pinch his nose and agree. The Jiu clan still has a weakness. And that is its insufficient heritage. It's impossible to rely on Jiyu Du Xing, a sword emperor. Ao Qingyun let out a muffled sigh. I think that our plan of suppressing Jiyu Du Xing is no longer feasible. We should start with the Jiyu clan. Then, we should threaten Jiyu Du Xing instead. Third brother's wisdom is higher than the heavens. Ao Feng Yun praised him. Since this is the case, we shouldn't delay any longer. We should hurry to the Jiyu clan. Go. The two groups of people mixed together and set off at the same time. However, the words of these two men had made the several emperor-level experts who had followed them secretly feel a chill in their hearts. Why should we hurt our friendship over such a small matter? Could it be that the lives of 2 emperor-level experts and 3 king-level experts are only a small matter in your eyes? Jiyu Duxing left like a whirlwind. However, he was secretly on high alert in his heart. It seems that the current situation is somewhat out of control. Ao clan was created in order to make use of their military strength to deal with Tian clan, Li clan, and Tu clan. But now, it has clearly deviated from the established direction. After Ao clan came out, they didn't immediately launch a strike against the other clans. Instead, they started to contend for hegemony in the Jianghu. The brothers seemed to be plotting against each other. It was really unexpected that such a situation would occur. I wonder what Chu Yang will do if he knows about this. However, the most important thing right now was that these 2 men from the Ao clan had clearly set their sights on the Jiyu clan first. They had to get past this hurdle first. But how was he going to pass this trial? As Jiyu Duxing sped along, he racked his brains. The Jiyu clan was too weak. They couldn't afford to offend the Ao clan in a head-on confrontation. Moreover, this was contrary to Chu Yang's established policy. I would only be hurting those close to me and making my enemies happy if I were to fight with these 2 young bastards. I would be doing a great favor to Tu Chen Hao and the others for no reason. And Chu Yang and the other brothers wouldn't look on with folded arms. They would certainly stand on my side. That would be a complete mess. I can't involve Chu Yang and the others. I can only solve this problem on my own, Jiyu Duxing thought along the way. He had a headache from thinking. But he couldn't come up with any solution. At this moment, he finally realized his own shortcomings. Perhaps he was an invincible general who could conquer cities and strongholds, but when it came to controlling the overall situation, he was still far from being able to do so. I want to protect myself in such a complicated situation. I don't want to implicate my brothers and allies. And I also want to resist the pressure of the Ao clan. It's very difficult. Jiyu Duxing sighed. He thought, I'm afraid that Chu Yang would have had endless tricks up his sleeves if it were him. But I'm helpless when it's my turn. Then, he suddenly thought of something. What would Chu Yang do if he were in my position? With these thoughts in mind, Zhongxian flew forward. Chu Yang went on the road alone. He went all the way east. Along the way, he unleashed his powerful spiritual power. While he hurried, he investigated. At the same time, he released the Calamity Sword to sense the elixirs. 1,000 miles went by smoothly. There was no wind or waves. Chu Yang felt strange. Logically speaking, someone should have tried to kill me. But I've already walked so far. I've passed 3 or 4 dangerous places along the way. So, why hasn't anything happened? There's still a long way to go. But I'm on a scenic tour. So, I'm not walking fast. Are they afraid of getting old? While he was thinking, the sword spirit suddenly exclaimed, there's a situation ahead. A situation? Minister Chu was startled. With a swoosh, his black clothes disappeared into the grass. His movements were extremely agile. Cough cough. There's a situation 20 miles away. The sword spirit was somewhat speechless. This guy didn't wait for me to finish speaking. And he disappeared without a trace. What? Why didn't you say so earlier? Chu Yang angrily got up and said, I was just being cautious. You're just a bird startled by the twang of a bow. The sword spirit sneered mercilessly. Chu Yang rolled his eyes. I'm all alone now. How can I not be careful? If I die, won't you die with me? I'm thinking for you. Don't be ungrateful. The sword spirit was speechless. I was obviously being overly careful. But, I'm thinking for someone else. I've seen thick-skinned people. But, I've never seen such a thick-skinned person. Who's that in front? Do you have any impression? Chu Yang asked in his mind as he cautiously climbed up and down. A little closer. I can't detect it now, the sword spirit said. Chu Yang lowered his head and ran. He used his concealment technique to the extreme. Even if he stared, he could only see the grass swaying. The trees in the forest swayed. If he could switch to slow motion, he could see that he was sometimes running, sometimes crouching, sometimes turning sideways, sometimes walking backward, and sometimes somersaulting. What was worth mentioning was that when he made these movements, he actually made use of the reflection of the grass on the ground and the refraction of the sunlight in the sky to hide his figure. Therefore, in broad daylight, he actually turned into a spectre. The road was getting shorter little by little. 15 kilometers, 5 kilometers. Finally, the sword spirit issued a warning when they were close to 3 kilometers away. Well, the opposite party has experts. Be careful not to be detected. Chu Yang was startled. He then lightened his footsteps, thousands of feet. How can I be detected? Could it be that the opposite party has a super emperor level expert? Well, these people in front of us are the most tyrannical in terms of strength, except for Ou Kufeng of the Ou clan. The sword spirit's voice was very cautious. Chu Yang sucked in a cold breath. So powerful? Moreover, they have clearly obtained accurate information. And they have a clear target. They have come to deal with you. The sword spirit carefully sensed and said, but their auras are very familiar. Several of them have an aura similar to Ao Xieyun's. Chu Yang was gobsmacked. His breathing became chaotic. Are you sure? I'm sure. The sword spirit was very sure. Chu Yang's mind was somewhat in a knot. He said in frustration, the people of the Ao clan? What reason do the people of the Ao clan have to deal with me? They should be dealing with the Tian clan, Tu clan, and the Black Devil clan. Why are they dealing with me instead? How much did this duke help them? How can they be so ungrateful? The sword spirit was also puzzled after pondering for a long time. After all, Ao clan didn't have any reason to attack Chu Yang first. Could it be that they are looking for you to inquire about Ao Xieyun? The sword spirit probed. Absolutely not. They would have come to me openly if that were the case. They wouldn't have sneakily set up an ambush like this. A cold light flashed in Chu Yang's eyes. He then extended his hand and wiped his face. Then, he spread his arms, and a burst of crackling sounds came from inside his body. His slender stature had become 3 inches shorter. It had become somewhat stout. He had a leopard head and round eyes. His face was fierce and fierce. He groped around in the tribulation space for a while. Then, he pulled out a broadsword. Then, he thought for a while. Then, he took out a veil and covered his face. You've already changed your appearance. Why do you still want to cover your face? The sword spirit was puzzled. This is the ingenuity of this plan. Chu Yang snorted. Then, he wrinkled his brows. He felt that something was wrong, and said, You've also seen the appearance of the young Black Devil. Can you imitate him even a little bit? The sword spirit wrinkled his brows and said, I can use my spiritual power to help you. But, it can only last for half an hour. Half an hour? That's enough. Chu Yang was overjoyed. He immediately restored his changed appearance to its original state. Then, a grayish mist came out of his body. He was now wearing a black robe and a black mask. He looked exactly like a young Black Devil. He was just standing there. But, his whole body was emitting a gloomy aura. The most important thing is your eyes, the sword spirit reminded. No problem. Chu Yang's vision condensed. Then, his eyes suddenly changed into the cruel and ruthless eyes of a scavenger vulture in the desert. At first glance, he looked exactly like a young Black Devil. Whether it was his figure, charm, or the temperament of his eyes, or the characteristics of his cultivation techniques, everything was perfect. This impostor laughed strangely in a hoarse voice and said, The trifling Ao clan dares to oppose my Black Devil. They don't know the meaning of death. Watch me kill them one by one. He rushed out with a shua sound. Don't be rash. It's better to check first. What if they don't have any evil intentions? The sword spirit hastily reminded him. There's no need to check. You must pay the price if you dare to provoke my black devil. Minister Chu had clearly gotten into the act. He was emitting a murderous aura. Chapter 607. Chu Yang was indeed going crazy. Ao clan has no reason to deal with me in any case, but of all people, they had come to deal with him. This was tantamount to biting the hand that fed him. Regardless of whether it was true or not, the news of Ao Xieyun being rescued by him had already spread throughout the Jianghu. It would definitely reach their ears, and they would be even more unable to deal with him. It was already too late for him to express his gratitude, yet he had actually set up an ambush? The minister was instantly enraged. No matter what the other party was thinking, this time, he was determined to teach the other party a lesson. Then, he quietly crouched down. In an instant, he retracted all of his life force fluctuations. All of his heartbeat, pulse, and other life force disappeared in an instant. It was as if he was a piece of rotten wood. Because the sword spirit was speaking in his mind. There are 3 people talking. What did he say? The first one said, "Why isn't he here yet?" Then the other one said, "Don't tell me he's gone." The sword spirit said. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and asked, "How was his tone?" The sword spirit said in a deep voice, "It's full of killing intent." Chu Yang snorted heavily in his heart. This group of people was Ao Lang Yun of the Ao clan's detachment. He was the number 2 figure of Ao clan's younger generation apart from Ao Xieyun. Ao Lang Yun had arrived here with his people after he had dealt a heavy blow to the Qian clan's industry. And, he had done so in order to stop King of Hell Chu. Old Third and Old Fourth have already fought with Jiyu Duxing twice. Old Fifth has also fought with Dong Wushong once, but he managed to escape. There's no news from Fourth Brother, who's trying to intercept Jimo Seventh Brother has already started fighting with Luo Kedi. Luo Kedi is injured and has left. Ao Lang Yun frowned. This means that the information is correct. But, why hasn't Big Brother King of Hell Chu arrived yet? Could it be that this fellow has been sightseeing all this time? Beside him were 2 old men in brocade robes. Their eyes shined brightly, and one of them said, "Second young master, there is no need to worry. Just relax and wait a little longer. King of Hell Chu couldn't have passed by here. Or, he might have been delayed by something on the way." Another person said, "However, dealing with King of Hell Chu this time is somewhat inappropriate. We must keep it strictly confidential. Ao clan will be labeled as repaying kindness with enmity if this matter spreads out." Ao Lang Yun snorted in a low voice. Then, he said to his confidant without any reservation, "First, King of Hell Chu is meddling in other people's business. There is a rumor in the Jianghu that King of Hell Chu saved Ao Xieyun. Whether this matter is true or not, there is no smoke without fire. According to my speculation, it is very likely to be true. This alone is enough for him to be sentenced to death. Secondly, King of Hell Chu may not have saved Ao Xieyun out of kindness. The Mo clan, the Dong clan, and the other clans are on the opposite side of the alliance. So, they bear the brunt of the attack. However, they haven't taken any action since the beginning. Their intention is none other than to let our Ao clan make the first move. Then, they'll sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. After that, they'll reap the fruits of our labor. Such an intention is worthy of death. But, the news of King of Hell Chu rescuing Ao Xieyun spread out at this time, and confused everyone. So, Ao clan had a clear target for revenge. This shows that King of Hell Chu and Mo Tianji are in cahoots with each other. Thirdly, King of Hell Chu led the Heavenly Armament Pavilion to destroy the OU clan overnight. So, the strength of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion can't be underestimated. The military strength of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is obvious to all even if they have the help of the Xie clan. So, they will become a big threat to us over time. Especially now that the Jianghu is in turmoil. And, the ambitions of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion are very clear. They must be eliminated or disintegrated as soon as possible. Otherwise, they will become the biggest enemy of our Ao clan once they are fully fledged. They may become the next Black Devil clan. Fourthly, Jiyu Du Xing, Dongwu Shong, and the others are outstanding talents of the younger generation. They have great prospects for development. I must have such young experts with potential as my right-hand men if I want to become the next clan lord. The Jianghu is in chaos now. So, it is a God-sent opportunity to subdue them. However, King of Helchu is their boss. So, how can they change their allegiance if King of Helchu doesn't die? Therefore, King of Helchu must die. They can be used by King of Helchu. So, they can certainly be used by me. Ao Lang Yun coldly snorted. He then insipidly said, "What can King of Helchu give them? And, I can give them 10 times what King of Helchu can give them. In fact, I can give them even more. This is the reason why I want to kill King of Helchu. Moreover, King of Helchu is the first person I must kill." Ao Lang Yun insipidly said, "You can say that I'm an ungrateful person who bites the hand that feeds me. But, King of Helchu must never live in this world." The two old men beside him tightly knitted their brows. They pondered for a while. Then, they finally heaved a long sigh. King of Helchu had saved Ao Xieyun. So, it was tantamount to setting himself against Ao Lang Yun. These matters were only Ao Lang Yun's speculations. But, they weren't necessarily false. It seems that King of Helchu must die if this is the case. The two old men looked at each other. Then, they stopped trying to dissuade Ao Lang Yun. Ao Lang Yun smiled and said, "I will personally dispatch 100 experts to kill him this time. So, King of Helchu should feel very proud even if he dies." The two old men forced a smile. Of course, the conversation between them was transmitted to the sword spirit's ears, and through the sword spirit, it was transmitted to Chu Yang's ears. King of Helchu's lungs were about to explode in anger. "I'm selfish. I want to fight for power and profit. So, why should I push all the blame to others? I may be *tch, but I still want a monument to my chastity. Is there such a beautiful thing in this world? Those big clans are targeting your Ao clan. They are hunting down Ao Xieyun. What does Old Man Guan have to do with this?" Old Man Guan was just happy to see this happen. Even Mo Tianji didn't add fuel to the fire, right? Chu Yang's murderous aura soared from his entire body. This made the sword spirit understand, this battle is unavoidable. He sighed softly, "Be careful. The opposite party has 2 8th grade Emperor level experts. They also have 10 4th or 5th grade Emperor level experts. The remaining 80-odd people are all King level experts." Chu Yang gently nodded. His murderous aura and anger receded like a tide. He regained his calmness. "This might be the most arduous battle I've ever had since I started my career. But, it's not my style to run away without fighting. Let me kill to stop the killing. I'll chop you ungrateful bastards to death. So what if you're from Ao clan? Aren't your necks made of meat?" A burst of cool breeze blew over. Chu Yang's body floated along with the wind. He then entered the dense forest in front of him like a flash of lightning. This was the place where Ao clan had set up their ambush. This was a dense forest of ancient pines. The dense pines covered the entire sky. Even though it was daytime and the sun was high up in the sky, the forest of ancient pines was still gloomy and gloomy. It was like a ghost's domain. "There seems to be some movement." The two old men in embroidered robes stood beside Ao Lang Yun. They wrinkled their brows and looked all around. A scream came from the periphery. The sound had come from the south. The complexion of the two men changed. One of them stayed behind, and the other one disappeared from where he was standing. "Let's go and take a look," Ao Lang Yun calmly said. The two men chased after him. They arrived in the direction where the sound had come from. They looked, and couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. They saw that a king-level expert of Ao clan was facing outside. His body was off the ground. He was firmly fixed to a pine tree by a pine branch. His body was dead, but his eyes were wide open. His eyes were full of panic and despair. This man's pants had fallen to his feet. They were hanging on the ground. His lower body was completely naked. There was a thin sword mark on his throat. He must have been attacked when he was relieving himself. His throat was cut by a sword. Then, he was nailed to the tree by a pine branch. The eyes of that emperor expert flashed as he said in a heavy voice. The other embroidered-robed emperor expert stepped forward and carefully examined him. Then, he said, "This man has a divine weapon. The cut seems fine. But, even his Adam's apple and neck have been cut in half. Moreover, this man's skill isn't lower than a 5th-grade king-level expert. Especially, he's an expert in assassination." Yes. Ao Lang Yun's complexion became serious. He extended his hand and waved, "Everyone, pay attention and be on guard. You must intercept and kill this man if you find him." Many people in the shadows agreed at the same time. The two embroidered-robed emperor experts became anxious. They shouted, "Everyone, withdraw from your original positions. Immediately change your positions." However, before he could finish speaking, another blood-curdling scream rang out. This time, it came from the north. Alas! The embroidered-robed emperor expert stamped his foot. His heart was full of powerlessness. "Second young master, how could you issue an order a moment ago? You should have added 'don't make a sound' even if you had issued an order. They would have complied if you had issued an order. But, this compliance is tantamount to providing targets for the assassins in the dark." It seemed that this embroidered-robed old man had a very high status in the Ao clan. He had dared to reprimand Ao Lang Yun to his face. His tone was tactful. But, it was obvious that he was blaming Ao Lang Yun. "Yes, it's my fault." Ao Lang Yun readily accepted the good advice. He bowed his head and admitted his mistake. "I don't know much about this kind of strategy. So, I ask Uncle Cai to take full command." This Uncle Cai's name was Cai Xiao Cheng. He and Li Changlong were two of the 8 great bodyguards of the Ao clan's clan lord, Ao Tianxing. 4 of these 8 bodyguards had followed Ao Xiayun. 2 of them had been assigned to Ao Lang Yun. And, the other 2 had been assigned to other people. This was also the Ao clan's way of protecting their younger brothers. Cai Xiao Cheng wasn't modest. This wasn't the time to be modest. He repeatedly issued orders, "Everyone, listen to my order. Leave your original hiding positions. Then, slowly gather around the center. Your movements don't need to be fast. But, don't make a sound." Then, he slipped away in the direction of the north. There was a big hole in the chest of a king-level expert. He was powerlessly sitting on the ground. He was no longer alive. So ruthless. Li Changlong clenched his teeth and said, "This man clearly had the ability to kill him without making him scream. But, he made him scream before he died. This man's ruthlessness and mercilessness can make one's hair stand on end." "Who is this man?" Ao Lang Yun asked. "Could it be King of Helchu?" Cai Xiao Cheng and Li Changlong looked at each other, and saw the uncertainty in each other's eyes. A rustling sound came from the pine forest. It was the sound of the ambushing experts rushing over. The enemy wouldn't be able to assassinate them silently as long as they formed a circle around each other. However, screams suddenly resounded one after another at this moment. Cai Xiao Cheng bellowed loudly. Then, he shook his arms, and flew in the direction of the sound like a big bird. Chapter 608. He saw that 4 people were lying on the ground hundreds of feet away. Their bodies were covered in blood. They had been cut into 8 pieces. Everyone was looking in the same direction. It was obvious that the enemy had attacked them from behind. 4 people had been killed in one blow. The smell of blood was faintly spreading in the black pine forest. It was close to the afternoon. The wind was blowing in the pine forest, and issued a rustling sound. The branches of the black pine forest were swaying gently. Countless shadows were swaying on the ground. It was daytime, but it had added a gloomy feeling to it. Cai Xiao Cheng glared at them. Then, he suddenly shouted like a spring thunder, "Who's behind this? Come out and fight with me if you're Han." His voice spread far and wide like a spring thunder. It shook the dense pine needles on top of their heads, and made them rustle down. Li Changlong's eyes flashed. He then said in a heavy voice, "King of Helchu, it's you, right? What? You dare to do it, but you don't dare to admit it. His voice had already spread out. But the black pine forest remained silent. No one answered him. Cai Xiao Cheng's lightning-like eyes swept back and forth. Suddenly, a golden light flashed. Cai Xiao Cheng bellowed, "Be careful." He flew up and grabbed the golden light before it could pierce the back of a king-level expert. It was a small and exquisite dagger. It was only half the length of a palm. It didn't have any craftsmanship to speak of. The only praiseworthy thing about it was its sharpness. Everyone's gaze subconsciously followed Cai Xiao Cheng's silhouette the moment he leapt out. But at this moment, 3 black lights suddenly shot out from another direction without a sound. The 3 black daggers were inserted into the backs of the 3 king-level experts. Li Changlong bellowed and rushed out in large strides. He rushed into the place where the 3 black lights had shot from like lightning. But there was no one there. In fact, there wasn't even the slightest sound. They hadn't even touched the enemy's shadow in a short period of time. But they had already lost 3 experts in silence. It was as if he had to fight a ghost in a foggy land. Ao Lang Yun tightly clenched his hands together. His palms were dripping with cold sweat. He felt a chill run down his spine. When had he ever experienced such an eerie and terrifying battle in his life? Suddenly, a voice drifted over. It came from the left, and then from the right. It said in a cold and gloomy voice, "Hee, not bad. It seems that you have some knowledge." "Yes, I am King of Hell Chu." This voice seemed to carry the dampness of hell, making people feel extremely uncomfortable when they heard it. Cai Xiao Cheng and Li Changlong condensed their entire cultivation. But they couldn't tell where this voice was coming from. He only felt that this voice was faintly discernible. A moment ago, it was still in the south, but the next moment, it was in the north. However, the distance between the south and the north was nearly 1,000 feet. A formidable opponent. Cai Xiao Cheng and Li Changlong thought about this at the same time. Li Changlong also overturned his previous conclusion: the opposite party is definitely not a king-level expert. He must be at least an emperor-level expert. "You are not King of Hell Chu." Cai Xiao Cheng calmed himself down and shouted in a cold voice, "King of Hell Chu is cunning and ruthless, but he definitely doesn't have the cultivation level of your excellency. Who are you? Why do you want to oppose my Ao clan?" There was one more thing that he hadn't said: King of Hell Chu isn't as gloomy as a ghost like you. In the black pine forest, there was silence again. It was deathly silent. A gloomy aura had been emitted, but it was quickly withdrawn. Cai Xiao Cheng's gaze turned cold. He silently floated out. He didn't make any sound, but he was as fast as lightning. He arrived on the opposite side in a flash. Then, he shook his hand, and a few big trees were shattered by his palm with a loud bang. A piece of black cloth fluttered in the air. Cai Xiao Cheng floated over like a ghost, and grabbed that piece of black cloth in his hand. Then, he looked at it with rapt attention. However, he couldn't see anything. So, he suspiciously grabbed that piece of cloth, and returned. That gloomy aura that had been emitted a moment ago was lingering in his mind. He felt that it was very familiar, but he couldn't remember it. "What did you find?" Li Changlong flew over. "You take a look." Cai Xiao Cheng handed over that piece of black cloth. "A piece of black cloth?" Li Changlong asked in a puzzled manner. He then brought that piece of cloth to his nose and sniffed it. "Be careful, it's poisonous," Cai Xiao Cheng hastily reminded him. "It's nothing. It doesn't smell anything." Li Changlong smiled. He then turned over the piece of cloth and said, "It's an ordinary piece of black cloth. It seems that it was shattered by a palm. But I didn't see anyone's shadow even after I shattered the cloth. This matter is extremely strange." Cai Xiao Cheng frowned. "Moreover, I seem to have felt a strange aura a moment ago. It's very..." He spoke till here. Then, he suddenly bellowed, "Dodge!" He flew forward. His speed was so fast that he left a trail of green smoke behind him. A golden light had already reached Ao Lang Yun's back. Cai Xiao Cheng bellowed, and grabbed that golden light with all his might. The tip of his sword was less than an inch away from Ao Lang Yun's back. Li Changlong bellowed, and pounced in the direction where the golden light had come from. 40 to 50 people moved at the same time, and besieged that place. Suddenly, a few more black lights silently appeared from another direction. The blade light was almost the same color as the air. Then, the 5 people's backs were hit while they were charging forward. Several blood-curdling screams were heard. Then, the 5 people fell to the ground, and rolled back and forth. The enemy had launched too many hidden weapons this time. So, they weren't fatal. However, one of them had been stabbed in the back of his heart, and had lost his life. Bean-sized beads of sweat were unceasingly dripping down from Ao Langyun's forehead. He had almost stepped into the yellow springs a moment ago. He had been so close. His complexion had turned deathly pale. He was trying his best to remain calm. However, a panic-stricken look had already appeared in his eyes. The enemy's movements were as fast as a ghost's. 2 8th-grade Emperor-level experts couldn't even catch the enemy's shadow. This dark forest seemed to have turned into a place of death. They could only look on helplessly as people died one after another. Rush out of the forest. Cai Xiao Cheng bellowed. The blue veins on his face were visible. He had already realized that the enemy was a top-notch assassin. Confronting the enemy in a place like this forest was equivalent to fighting the Dragon King in the water. This place was the enemy's absolute home ground. The enemy would have nowhere to hide only if they rushed out into an open area under the sun. Li Changlong suddenly came to his senses. He repeatedly whistled, and led everyone to crowd around Ao Langyun to escape. Everyone had been full of confidence at the beginning of the ambush. They had thought that they would be able to capture King of Hell Chu as soon as he arrived. Who would have thought that they would run out of the forest in such a distressed manner? This was undoubtedly a huge irony. Another golden light flashed. Li Changlong put his hands together, and caught the golden light in his hands. His nose became crooked as soon as he saw it. This is a piece of crushed gold. He casually threw it on the ground. Then, he saw 3 golden lights shooting from another direction out of the corner of his eyes. Li Changlong leaped, and caught them one by one. He was so sullen in his heart that he almost cursed, "All of them are gold." Suddenly, a dense black light flashed from another direction. Li Changlong's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the enemy had finally launched a killing move. He roared, and shook his hands. Then, he pounced in the direction of the person on the left. He had already figured out the pattern of this person's attack. He would leave immediately if his attack failed. In fact, this person would have left his hiding position at the same time he had launched his attack. This person has launched 3 attacks in a row. So, he's most likely to appear in this direction. It doesn't matter even if he isn't. The route that I'm pouncing on is one of the 3 directions that the enemy has taken. So, I'm sure that I'll be able to intercept him if there's any movement. However, his body had barely flown 70 feet away when a series of sharp puff sounds resounded. Then, more than 10 golden lights were shot from the place where the hidden weapons had been shot. The strength of these attacks was very fast. He hadn't changed his position this time. Damn it. Li Changlong's eyes were bloodshot. He wanted to change his direction. But, it was already too late. The 13 golden lights seemed to have been calculated. They were very scattered. And, each of them was aimed at a single person. Cai Xiao Cheng, who was standing beside Ao Langyun, was caught off guard. He desperately turned around to intercept them. But, he was only able to block 5 of them. Orderly screams resounded. 8 people were injured at the same time. Cai Xiao Cheng's beard and beard were like halberds. He shouted, "Don't worry about anything. Let's rush out of the Black Pine Forest first." Even this 8th-grade Emperor-level expert felt fear in his heart at this moment. Who is the opposite party? How could they be so vicious? Such, superb. Cai Xiao Cheng didn't want to admit it in his heart. But, he had to admit that the opposite party's assassination level was at the top of the world. He vigilantly looked in all directions. Then, he drew back step by step, and personally brought up the rear. Suddenly, a burst of screams was heard. The team behind him was in a state of panic. Cai Xiao Cheng angrily shouted, What are you panicking about? Poison. The daggers and swords are poisoned. The poison flared up as soon as they were pulled out. A person screamed miserably. Cai Xiao Cheng's heart shook. He hurriedly went over to take a look. He only felt a chill run down his spine. The 12 injured king-level experts had clenched their teeth and persevered. They hadn't even wrinkled their brows. But they had died as soon as the daggers had been pulled out. In fact, they hadn't even left behind a word. 22 people. The opposite party hadn't even shown up. And 22 experts had already died on his side. The king-level experts had died. None of the emperor-level experts had been injured. However, this was still a huge loss after all. Cai Xiao Cheng had never seen such a cunning and cruel enemy in his more than 30 years of adventuring in the Jianghu. Everyone was about to rush out of the jungle when they saw that the sunlight in front of them was distorted. It seemed that the enemy's mood was fluctuating intensely in the dark. He wasn't willing to let them escape. Suddenly, a burst of gloomy aura spread out. Then, it seemed to be forcibly restrained. Cai Xiao Cheng's heart was moved again. It's so familiar. It's so familiar. This name should have been on the tip of my tongue. But, why can't I remember it? Suddenly, a burst of golden light flashed. Dozens of golden lights pounced out at the same time this time. Cai Xiao Cheng shouted loudly, and leaped to intercept them. Meanwhile, a black light spread out from another direction like an inescapable net. Li Changlong issued a long and loud shout. His body moved like a dragon, and fluttered in the air. Then, Cai Xiao Cheng angrily rushed into the place where the black light had shot out from. He was 100% sure that the opposite party hadn't left this time. That's because I've locked onto him with my aura a moment ago. He shouldn't have chased him so close. Cai Xiao Cheng's heart was filled with joy. He flew and pounced forward. A black shadow flew out from the shadows like a swallow and flew outward. You still want to run? Stay here. Cai Xiao Cheng roared loudly. He mobilized his lifelong martial power, and shot his palms with all his might. That man didn't have enough time to evade. So, he was forced to helplessly sneer. Then, his long sword flashed a swordlight, and flew out of his hand. That gloomy aura pervaded the air once again. However, the range of this attack was much larger this time. A divine light flashed in Cai Xiao Cheng's mind. He finally realized why this gloomy aura was so familiar. He smashed the flying sword into pieces with a bang. Then, he roared in a violent rage, "Black Devil! So, it's you. You even pretended to be king of Hell Chu. You're too shameless." Chapter 609. Cai Xiao Cheng finally remembered why he had learned it with such familiarity. Isn't this gloomy smell the unique aura of the Black Devil clan? He has killed so many of my people like a ghost. Perhaps, only the core assassins of the Black Devil clan have such a method of assassination in the entire world. That man had been shaken by Chu Yang's palm. He was wearing a black robe and a black mask. Then, he finally revealed himself. He made a turn in the air, and jumped up a big tree like a meteor. Then, he sinisterly smiled and said, "I, King of Hell Chu, will never impersonate someone else." What Black Devil? Have you become senile? Li Changlong had already rushed over while he was speaking. He angrily shouted, "Black Devil, you're extremely despicable and shameless. You've been killed, and you still want to quibble? Blood for blood. Leave your life for this old man." That big tree was smashed to pieces with a loud bang. A black silhouette flew up in a swaying manner. He flashed under the setting sun, and said with a sinister smile, "Ao clan is nothing more than this. Ridiculous, ridiculous." Then, he suddenly soared high into the sky, and rushed over before Cai Xiao Cheng could catch up with him again. Then, he soared high into the sky, and rushed over for 17 feet. His toes landed on a branch of a big tree. He was about to borrow the strength of the branch to fly out. A silhouette flashed, and Li Changlong appeared in front of him like a ghost. Then, he shot his palm. That black silhouette fell backwards, and fell to the ground like a meteorite. His mask was shattered by the strong wind generated by the palm. It fluttered in the sky like a black butterfly. That man choked and coughed. He then said with difficulty, good palm strength. Li Changlong had caught a glimpse of that man's appearance. He had hawk-like eyes, sharp nose, and sword-like eyebrows. His entire face was emitting an intense sinister aura. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. Black Devil, it's really you. What else do you have to say? That man coldly snorted, and landed on the ground. Li Changlong and Cai Xiaocheng flew over at the same time. Suddenly, a burst of pink smoke rose from the place where that man had landed with a bang. Cai Xiaocheng was far away. So, he hastily stopped his footsteps. However, Li Changlong had already rushed into the pink smoke. Only 7 or 8 consecutive collision sounds were heard from the smoke. Then, a black silhouette distorted the space and flashed a few times. Then, he spouted a mouthful of blood, and disappeared. Li Changlong rushed out of the pink smoke with a flushed face. Cai Xiaocheng still wanted to chase after him. However, Li Changlong shouted loudly, don't chase after him. Cai Xiaocheng turned his head in amazement, and saw that Li Changlong's body was on the verge of collapse. He was startled, and wanted to come over to support him. Don't come over. Don't touch me. Li Changlong roared. Ah! Cai Xiaocheng was stunned. Li Changlong smiled sadly. What a vicious black devil. What an obscene haymo. In the end, I still fell into his trap. Cai Xiaocheng was shocked. What's wrong? Then he realized, that pink smoke? Li Changlong exposed an indescribable expression on his face. He felt an intense shame and indignation. He clenched his teeth and said, it's the lust poison of the lust dragon. That's why I stopped you. If both of us are poisoned, then we're done for. Ah! Cai Xiaocheng was dumbfounded, as if he had been petrified. He suddenly understood why Li Changlong had such an expression on his face. He couldn't help but look up to the sky, and curse loudly. Filthy words came out of his mouth, but he still couldn't quell the resentment in his heart. Who would have thought that the Black Devil would carry such a sinister technique as the lust poison of the lust mosquito? There was no antidote for the poison of the lust mosquito. One could only rely on the intercourse between a man and a woman to get rid of this lust poison. However, one's entire body would turn into pus and die if they couldn't excrete it within 3 hours. Li Changlong was more than 10 years old this year. Moreover, he was an 8th grade emperor-level expert. So, how could he lay his hands on a woman even if he found one? This was related to his lifelong reputation and chastity. Moreover, how could there be a stunning beauty in such a desolate place? He would be considered lucky if he could find a village girl at best. And, it was absolutely impossible for him to return to the Ao clan. Li Changlong's face turned green and white. He then said in a hoarse voice, I can suppress it for 10 hours at most with my cultivation. After 10 hours, I'll be beyond saving. Brother Li, hurry up and find one. Find one. Cai Xiaocheng fiercely stamped his feet. How could he say such words? How can this old man lose face like this? Li Changlong's lips trembled. Then, he exhausted all his strength, and loudly cursed, Black Devil. I'm dead. Li Changlong had an impulse to cry after he had cursed. Even if he had been poisoned by that kind of poison, it would still be better than this. This is simply tormenting people to death, in the most humiliating way. This enmity is really big. Brother Li, a real man shouldn't be so petty. Your life is more important. You don't have to worry about firewood as long as you're alive. Cai Xiaocheng anxiously advised, besides, no one else knows about this matter. You, I, the heaven, and the earth know about it. I, Cai Xiaocheng, swear to the heavens that I'll die a miserable death if I reveal even a little bit of this matter. I'll make my grandchildren slaves and maids. Brother Cai. You. Li Changlong stamped his feet, and sighed, why did you make such a heavy oath? There's no time to lose. Let's go and look for it immediately. Cai Xiaocheng said, that Black Devil has been injured by you. He won't dare to come again. Let second young master and the others wait here for a while. I'll go with you. I'll go and look for it myself. Li Changlong refused. He obviously didn't want to die. But, How can I let someone look at this matter from the side? We've been brothers for decades. But I can't do that. It's embarrassing. You do what you need to do. I'll keep watch for you. Cai Xiao Cheng and Li Changlong blushed after they had finished speaking. Both of them were people of virtue and prestige in the Ao clan. But they felt embarrassed when they were discussing such a topic. The Li clan's territory is 700 miles to the west from here. There's a town there. So, there must be a brothel there. Cai Xiao Cheng lowered his head. We'll arrive there in 10 hours with our speed. Brothel? The muscles on Li Changlong's face trembled. You want me to go to a brothel? Cai Xiao Cheng's face turned red as he angrily said, you've locked your manhood for so many years. And you've got the lust poison of the lust dragon now. Do you think that a woman can satisfy you? His face turned red as he said, I'm afraid that you won't be able to. Kill her. Li Changlong's complexion stiffened. His complexion turned purple as he muttered, then, I can only go. How can there be so many women apart from the brothel? Cai Xiao Cheng gasped for breath. Li Changlong smiled bitterly, I've never set foot in a brothel in my entire life. But I've reached my old age now. And I have to, alas. He heaved a long sigh. Cai Xiao Cheng anxiously urged him, don't sigh. Let's go quickly. If we're late. The two hurriedly ran to Ao Langyun's side, and said that they had something to do. So, they had to leave for the time being. They also asked them to wait in an open area. They didn't even wait for a reply. Then, the two 8th grade Emperor-level experts soared up, and left impatiently. Li Changlong gnashed his teeth in anger as he vowed. I swear that I won't be a man if I don't slaughter the Black Devil clan in this lifetime. Ao Langyun was puzzled as he looked in the direction in which the two Emperor-level experts had left. He was at a loss. At such a critical moment, what could be more important than the plan here? What will you do if King of Hell Chu comes after you to leave? This isn't a big plan. He felt depressed in his heart. So, he sat down sullenly. Then, an intense desire to recruit subordinates of his own rose in his heart. Chu Yang flew out like a meteor. He stuck close to the ground, and shot out like a black smoke. He rushed out more than 50 kilometers in one breath. And, the color of the sky had finally darkened. Chu Yang jumped into the jungle with a shua sound. He then coughed out the blood he had been suppressing. He had racked his brains and exhausted all his skills. Moreover, he had managed to escape from the Black Pine Forest with the help of the Sword Spirit. Moreover, he had taught the enemy a bloody lesson. Moreover, he had successfully framed the Black Devil clan. However, he had also paid a huge price. Moreover, he had suffered a lot when he had clashed with Li Changlong in the end. It was just a short collision, but he had already consumed 2 incomplete heavy pills. He had needed 1 more to escape here. This meant that Chu Yang had encountered 3 life and death crises in the short span of a blink of an eye. Perhaps, Chu Yang would have had no choice but to let the sword spirit take over his body if Li Changlong hadn't diverted half of his martial power to prevent the pink smoke from invading his body. However, all of this was worth it. Presumably, Ao Langyun and the others' hatred towards He Shu would have grown like bamboo shoots after the rain. Naturally, it would have been better if that Emperor-level expert had been turned into pus by the aphrodisiac poison. Chu Yang spat out blood as he hastily took out the incomplete versions of the heavy pills and swallowed them. Then, he maliciously thought in his heart, it would have been lively if Li Changlong didn't know what kind of poison this was. And, he would have called everyone to take a sniff of it. Everyone would have stuck out their crotches and looked for a brothel. 70 or 80 people would have pitched tents at the same time. I believe that the scene would have been spectacular. The sword spirit saw that Chu Yang had finally recovered. So, he asked, there's one thing that I don't understand. You can't speak in a faintly discernible voice with your current cultivation. How did you do it? Chu Yang snorted and said with a smile, didn't you notice that I had patted a big tree in every direction since I had entered the forest? In fact, I had patted 1 tree in every 100 trees. I noticed that. But, what does that have to do with this? The sword spirit was puzzled. I used yin energy when I patted the trees. So, the insides of the trees had already been shattered by me. And they had become empty shells. Then, I deliberately aimed my energy at those trees when I spoke. So, an echo was naturally transmitted from those trees. Therefore, my voice could be heard from all directions. Chu Yang smiled and said, "One has to be careful in Jianghu. Especially, one must be cautious in a life and death situation. Sword Spirit, you must learn this from me." The Sword Spirit didn't speak. This guy has been using my spiritual power to help him. And he had to rely on my heavy pills to save his life. But he has turned around to teach me a lesson. Chapter 610. Only the AO clan has obstructed us on this road. This is obviously not right. Chu Yang muttered, "I slaughtered the OU clan. But OU Du Xiao and his father are still so calm. They haven't come to take revenge on me." Sword Spirit sinisterly replied, "It's not that they won't take revenge. It's just that the time hasn't come yet." Fuck. Minister Chu cursed. He then stood up, "Open the way." He thought, Du Xing and the others have already been ambushed by the AO clan. Is Luo Ku Di injured? I wonder how injured he is. AO clan's actions were beyond everyone's expectations. And they had already exceeded everyone's expectations. Mo Tianji and I have clearly miscalculated. How should we react? The entire Jianghu seems to have ushered in the end because of AO clan's unreasonable interference. Everyone is trying their best to stir up trouble. Everyone is sparing no effort to sit on the sidelines and watch the fire burn. Everyone is waiting to take advantage of it. Ambition will inevitably rise in the Jianghu. Chu Yang looked up to the sky and sighed. I'm afraid that less than half of the original clans will survive after this storm. In fact, even less. Countless king-level experts and revered martial artists will lose their lives in this storm. Chu Yang had never wanted to see Mo Tianji so urgently. The current situation had become so complicated that it could make one's hair stand on end. As far as Chu Yang knew, there were only two people in the entire heavenly layer who could deal with such a complicated situation with such ease. One is Diwu Qingru, and the other is Mo Tianji. Even I can't do it. In another direction, nighttime, Cai Xiao Cheng and Li Changlong finally came out of the brothel. They looked up, and saw that the sky was filled with stars. It was almost dawn. 7 or 8 prostitutes were lying down in a room on the roof of the brothel behind them. They didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. Their cheeks were flushed, and their eyes were blurred. So satisfying. So satisfying. I didn't expect that such an old man would be so fierce. He lasted for 3 hours. He is so energetic. So fierce. Which young man can have such endurance? Motherfucker. I'll have to pick an old man when I receive a guest in the future, even if it's free. Moreover, this guest is so generous. Look at the gold ingots on the ground. Oh, so happy. Emperor-level expert Li Changlong's legs had become somewhat soft. When they came out of the brothel, they didn't care about shocking the world. They lowered their heads and rushed all the way. In just a few moments, they were already dozens of miles away. It was too embarrassing. Brother Li, Brother Li. Cai Xiao Cheng caught up from behind and blinked. Are you done? Li Changlong's complexion turned black. Enough. Cough cough. Brother Li is really old but vigorous. This. Cai Xiao Cheng gave him a thumbs up. This old man has been hearing calls from upstairs all night. There are a lot of people downstairs, and they are all betting. Bet? Li Changlong's face turned red. He angrily said, "What bet?" Everyone was betting on how long you could last. In the end, everyone lost. Cai Xiao Cheng coughed dryly. Li Changlong's face turned as black as charcoal. His heart, however, seemed to be possessed by demons and gods. He couldn't help but reminisce about it. Brother Li, how does it taste? Cai Xiao Cheng chuckled. This taste. Li Changlong narrowed his eyes as he reminisced about it. Then, he suddenly realized something, and became furious. What taste? He then flew away. It seemed as if he had broken some taboo since then. This emperor-level expert Li Changlong would mysteriously disappear for a period of time whenever he went to a place. Cai Xiao Cheng was greatly puzzled. So, he followed him several times. And, he found that Li Changlong would change his appearance every time he went to a place. Then, he would rush into a brothel. He's addicted to the taste. The world has lost a righteous ruler and gained a perverted thief. This is King of Hell Chu's sin. Chu Yang rushed all the way. Finally, 2 days later, he saw smoke rising in the distance at noon. His heart skipped a beat. He stepped on the top of the mountain and looked around. There's no sign of human habitation here. How can there be smoke rising from the kitchen? He walked along the main road and saw a fully loaded caravan coming towards him. There were more than 20 people in the caravan. Their heads were full of sweat, and their faces were full of exhaustion. It was obvious that they had traveled a long and arduous journey. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat, and he stopped. The old man at the front of the caravan ran over while wiping his sweat and gasping for breath when he saw Chu Yang coming towards them. Sir, cough cough, may I ask how far it is to the Song clan's fort? Song clan's fort. Chu Yang didn't know what Song clan's fort was. So, he replied, I'm sorry. I'm just in a hurry. I don't know where Song clan's fort is. The old man's face was simple and honest. He nodded and bowed, it's all right. Thank you very much, my lord. My lord is very kind. You're a good person. Chu Yang nodded and casually asked, are you delivering goods on such a hot day? Yes. The old man was obviously very talkative. But, his complexion turned bitter as he said, it's not easy for this little old man to get a job. I have to deliver goods for a living. Oh, there's no other way. There are old and young people at home. Dozens of people are waiting to eat. Chu Yang nodded and said with pity, it's not easy. The old man suddenly wanted to cry, there's no other way. I'm forced by life. Then, he politely said, my lord, you haven't eaten yet, right? My lord, you didn't even bring a water bottle on such a hot day. The journey is long and arduous. The sun is high in the sky. It's not easy. No pop-up read no advertisement, read no advertisement. Then, he shouted, little dog, quickly bring a water bottle over. Let this lord moisten his throat. Then, he turned to Chu Yang, my lord, it's fate that brought us together. It's just a small gesture. Please don't take it to heart. Please don't blame me for taking matters into my own hands. Chu Yang smiled warmly and said, what are you talking about? You have good intentions. I can't thank you enough. How can I blame you? The old man chuckled and said, my lord, you're really a good person. I've been delivering goods in Jianghu for so many years. I've relied on being kind to others. There are still many good people in this world. Chu Yang nodded repeatedly and said, you're really a good person. Then, he took the water bottle from the little dog and nodded to express his thanks. The old man's turbid eyes looked at the water bottle in Chu Yang's hand. He politely said, my lord, you should drink a mouthful. Chu Yang smiled warmly and said, I'm not thirsty for the time being. But I'll remember your kindness. I'll drink it whenever I'm thirsty. The old man smiled happily and said with relief, that's good. My lord, take care of yourself. I'll take my leave now. Chu Yang smiled gratefully and said, thank you, my lord. Have a safe journey. The old man shouted and the carriage set off again. They were still moving slowly. Chu Yang stood on the side of the road and smelled the fragrance in the carriage. It seemed that they were pulling carriages of spices. The old man kept turning his head and waving his hand. Chu Yang smiled and waved his hand. He turned around and left. After taking 2 steps, his whole body suddenly trembled. He opened his eyes wide and hissed, you, who are you? The old man looked at him from afar. It seemed that he didn't hear what he said. Chu Yang groaned. His body shook violently a few times. His eyelids seemed to be about to close. He tried to open his eyes and roared like spring thunder, who are you? He sat down. In an instant, the sky and earth turned upside down. The old man saw Chu Yang fall down. He suddenly trotted over and stopped 3 feet away. He carefully asked, my lord, what happened to you? Chu Yang shook his head. It seemed that he wanted to shake off the dizziness in his head. He weakly threw the water bottle aside and muttered, How could it be poisoned? I was very careful, how could it be poisoned? His eyes were lifeless. He muttered as if there was no one around. He seemed to be extremely regretful. That old man and more than 20 coachmen gathered around. They cautiously looked at Chu Yang, and said with a strange smile, Poisoned? Ha, my lord, this old man forgot to tell you. Although you were very vigilant and didn't dare to drink my water, you didn't think that the water bottle was poisoned. As long as your hand touched the water bottle, it would be poisoned. Chu Yang said weakly. He then retorted with great difficulty, Nonsense. Say, there's obviously no poison on that water bag. I can completely feel this. There was medicine on the water bottle, but it wasn't poison. The old man's eyes emitted a ferocious light, but, as long as you touched the water bottle and passed by my carriage, you smelled the fragrance. It was highly toxic. Moreover, there was no antidote. Your whole body would be paralyzed. King of Hell Chu, can you die in peace? I see. Chu Yang sighed sadly and closed his eyes. Then, he opened them again and weakly asked, Who are you? I, Chu Yang, have moved unhindered all my life. I have single-handedly overturned the heavens. But, I'm going to die, here today. Tell me who you are. Let me die with some understanding. That old man mischievously sneered and said, King of Hell Chu, you obviously won't die so easily. You've massacred 8,000 people of my OU clan. Don't tell me that you want to die so easily. You're dreaming. So, it's the OU clan. Chu Yang forced a smile and said, This is the cycle of justice. What goes around comes around. I killed your entire clan. And, I'm going to die in your hands. OU Cheng Wu, it's you, right? The old man burst into loud laughter. His laughter was mournful and shrill. He then shouted, Yes, it's this old man. He wiped his face as he said this. Then, he removed his disguise and revealed his true face. He was the clan lord of the OU clan, OU Cheng Wu. The complexion of the youth who had given Chu Yang the water bottle also changed. He turned into the valiant and formidable young lord of the OU clan, the young poison spirit OU Du Xiao. His complexion had turned ashen at this moment. He looked at Chu Yang with extreme resentment. King of Hell Chu, you hadn't thought that you would end up like this when you had ruthlessly and mercilessly attacked our OU clan, right? Chu Yang choked and laughed. He then nodded repeatedly, OU Du Xiao. Yes, I hadn't thought of this. But, I, King of Hell Chu, didn't die in vain. I didn't lose anything. More than 10,000 lives of the OU clan were buried with me. So, what did I lose? I made a profit. I made more than 8,000 times. OU Du Xiao, they will be scared if they see me in the underworld after you kill me. Waha. Chapter 611. Chu Yang smiled mockingly. Third, all of you are acting as if you don't have any cultivation. So, you must have taken some kind of medicine to conceal your cultivation so that others can't see through you. That's why they've let their guard down. But, an expert is an expert. You're still an expert no matter how much you try to conceal your cultivation. The net doesn't even splash dust because of your feet. Chu Yang laughed out loud. This is a muddy road. The weather is dry now. So, the horses' hooves create a cloud of dust when they step on it. Even a gust of wind can fill the sky. But, your people are stepping on it as if they're stepping on a stone. Isn't it strange? Don't tell me that king-level experts are in charge of delivering goods on the road these days. Fourth, we've met for the first time. We've never met before. But, you gave me a water sack. Chu Yang smiled. I've never seen such a kind-hearted person in the lower three heavens. You're kind-hearted by nature. But, you should have made sure that this person you've suddenly met doesn't have any intention of robbing you, right? You're so enthusiastic, as if you've seen your own father. Do you think I'm stupid? There are so many loopholes. Wouldn't I be more stupid if I fell into your scheme? Chu Yang indifferently said, Do you know that I caught all the spies who had been hiding in Ironcloud Nation for more than 10 years by relying on these clues when I arrived in the lower three heavens? And, you're using this method to deal with me now? Chu Yang burst into loud laughter. Oyu Cheng Wu, has your head been kicked by a donkey? Oyu Cheng Wu's eyes were filled with anger. He pointed his trembling finger at Chu Yang. Then, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood with a puff sound. Chu Yang's vitality had almost recovered. So, his eyes gradually exposed a murderous intention. You too, it's almost time. I should send you on your way. Thousands of Oyu clan members are still eagerly waiting for you to reunite in the Netherworld. Don't make them wait too anxiously. That would be my sin. Hold on. Oyu Du Xiao shouted in a low voice. He firmly looked at Chu Yang. I want to know. You've seen through our disguise. But, you've still come into contact with that water sac. And, as far as I know, this kind of mixed poison is a unique creation of our Oyu clan. There's no antidote in this world, and no one knows. Even a monarch-level expert can't resist it with his own cultivation. How did you do it? Chu Yang snorted. You don't need to know this. The tribulation sword appeared in his hand with a clang sound. He then coldly shouted, Oyu Du Xiao, it's your turn now. Suddenly, Oyu Cheng Wu laughed miserably, and black smoke came out of his body. Chu Yang squinted his eyes, and slashed his sword horizontally. A ray of light flew out like a meteor, and chopped off Oyu Cheng Wu's head. Then, Chu Yang used the tip of his sword to cut open Oyu Cheng Wu's chest lapel, and took out a book. Black smoke was continuously coming out of this book. Wherever Chu Yang's vital chi went, the black smoke was immediately extinguished. I knew that you had this thing. It's no wonder that I couldn't find it even after searching the entire Oyu clan, Chu Yang sneered. He saw 4 words written on the cover of the book, 10,000 Poisons Evil Book. The Oyu clan had relied on this secret technique to become famous. In fact, it was as thick as a small brick. Oyu Du Xiao's eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't help but feel his blood boil when he saw that his father had died tragically in front of him. He roared, and rushed forward. His figure was fleeting, and unpredictable. His body was emitting a thick black fog with a fishy smell. This was the poison demon technique that the clan lord of the Oyu clan could practice. Chu Yang's current cultivation was far higher than Oyu Du Xiao's. So, he turned around, and rushed into the black fog. Then, the tribulation sword angrily shot forward. Oyu Du Xiao screamed. The tip of the sword was pulled out of his chest, and blood spurted out. However, he still staggered, and didn't fall down. He firmly clutched his chest, and asked with difficulty, why aren't you afraid of poison? Chu Yang was inside the black smoke. He looked at Oyu Du Xiao with his clear eyes, and slowly said, I'm not afraid of poison because I'm the master of the tribulation sword. No poison in this world is of any use to me. Oyu Du Xiao's eyes bulged, and almost fell out of their sockets. He had been seriously injured. But, he still felt his blood rushing through his body at a rapid speed. So that's how it is. Oyu Du Xiao looked at Chu Yang in a daze. Then, he suddenly faced upwards, and miserably laughed. He seemed to have gone crazy, and shouted, I regret it. I regret it. He finally fell down with a plop sound. His body twitched, and then stopped making any sound. Head. Oyu Du Xiao was dead, but his eyes were still wide open. There was no sadness or resentment in his stiff pupils. There was only endless regret. His body gradually began to wrinkle, and lost its vitality. Chu Yang looked at Oyu Du Xiao's eyes. Oyu Du Xiao had died with his eyes wide open. He secretly sighed in his heart. He could understand Oyu Du Xiao's last words, I regret it. I regret it. What does that mean? The master of the tribulation sword. The appearance of the tribulation sword once every 10,000 years also symbolized that the upper 3 heavens was about to be turned upside down. The current ruling clans would fall from power one by one. The brothers of the master of the tribulation sword would form a new ruling clan in the future, and rule the upper 3 heavens. This was a convention that hadn't changed in the upper 3 heavens for 10,000 years. Some people had wanted to fight against it. So, the original ruling clans and the Master of the Tribulation Sword would fight to the death every time the upper three heavens changed. However, the Master of the Tribulation Sword would win every time, and change the situation of the upper three heavens. Oyu Du Xiao also had this opportunity. He could have treated people with sincerity like Xiedan Qiong's clan. He could have made friends with Chu Yang, and gained Chu Yang's favor. Then, how could the Oyu clan not have a place in the upper three heavens in the future? The Oyu clan couldn't become one of the ruling clans of the upper three heavens. But, it was certain that the Oyu clan would become one of the ruling clans of the upper three heavens. That was the ultimate goal that countless generations of the Oyu clan had dreamt of since its establishment. It was also the supreme glory of the upper three heavens. It was already at their fingertips. The god of fate had already bestowed this great gift to the Oyu clan. But, they had ruined this once in 10,000 years opportunity because of a moment of greed. Moreover, they had also brought their clan into the abyss of death. Nearly 10,000 people of their clan had perished. How could Oyu Du Xiao not regret? The Oyu clan had clearly made up their mind to make friends with King of Hell Chu at that time. They had even held a meeting to return the money to King of Hell Chu. Then, they would make a fair trade with King of Hell Chu. Oyu Du Xiao had opposed it in his heart even when he had changed his mind. And, the clan's determination hadn't been strong at that time. So, the matter could have been reversed as long as Oyu Du Xiao had resolutely opposed it. However, he had become greedy, angry, and ambitious at that critical moment. And, it had eventually gotten out of hand. How could Oyu Du Xiao not regret? Even if he was killed, if his spirit still existed after his death, he would be filled with endless regret until the end of time. Chu Yang sighed deeply as he looked at Oyu Du Xiao, who had shouted, "I regret it so much." Before his death. He should have been one of the 12 influential figures of the upper three heavens in the future. He hadn't even started to grow. But, he had died at Chu Yang's hands. Chu Yang couldn't help but sigh as he recalled Oyu Du Xiao's heroic demeanor in the upper three heavens. His poison techniques had made the entire upper three heavens tremble in fear. You regret it. But, how can I not regret it? I would have had the assistance of a clan that was proficient in using poison in the future if you had made friends with me wholeheartedly. Then, wouldn't my path of the sword calamity have been much easier? How many enemies would have been killed by the word poison in the battle of the upper heavens? How many casualties would have been prevented from my brothers? It's a pity that you've chosen another path. I had already felt that you, the poison spirit, would have been a formidable enemy in the lower three heavens back in the great Zhao continent city. I had already expressed my goodwill in the lower three heavens Mount Dingjun. I had revealed my intention to make friends with you. Otherwise, why would I have given you such leniency? Why would I have given you such preferential conditions? I, King of Hell Chu, have a lot of money. But, I'm not a prodigal. You, Oyu Du Xiao, were vicious in the lower three heavens. But, you were still a lover. You still had a pure heart in the lower three heavens Mount Dingjun. But, why did you suddenly get blinded by your ambition at the critical moment? You ultimately chose another path. You regretted it. But, you only regretted it when you were about to die. You should have known that regret is useless, right? Farewell, poison spirit. No. There will be no more poison spirit in the heavens from now on. Chu Yang gently sighed. He extended his hand, and closed Oyu Du Xiao's eyes. Then, he silently said, I'm sending you on your last journey. I'm making you close your eyes in this world. And, I'm also making you open your eyes in the other world. It's said that people who die with grievances will become blind in the netherworld. I don't want you to become blind. I'm not doing this for Oyu Du Xiao of this life. Instead, I'm doing this for the all-powerful poison spirit of my previous life. Oyu Du Xiao of this life isn't worth it. But, the poison spirit of my previous life is worth it. Who would have known that the 12 influential figures of the lower three heavens in my previous life were my Leduo? Especially, Dark Bamboo, Black Devil, Du Xiao, Poison Spirit, Xiegong, and Tian Buru, who stood at the peak. This is my dream. Chu Yang stood up and shouted in a low voice. Then, The two shopkeepers came out. They struck a big hole in the ground with a bang. Then, they put the corpses of Oyu Du Xiao's father and the Oyu clan's experts into the hole. Then, they pushed their palms, and piled up a grave. The calamity sword flew out with a shua sound, and cut down a big tree on the roadside. The sword light whooshed, and a section of the tree trunk turned into a smooth tombstone in an instant. It then stood in front of the grave. Chu Yang thought for a moment. Then, he carved a few words on this simple and crude tombstone. He sighed deeply. Then, he got up, and flew away. He didn't turn his head even after his figure had disappeared. The setting sun shone on the tombstone, and illuminated the words on it. There was no name of the deceased. There was no introduction. There was only a poem. The entanglement of gratitude and grudges is Jianghu. Heroes and heroines are also nothingness. The emperor regrets my regret. Who wins and loses in the dreamy clouds? What's the point of this life or the previous life? Who's innocent since ancient times? Heroes dance in the yellow springs and blue skies. The heavenly imperial court is poisonous. This poem was either to commemorate the poisoned spirit of his previous life, or it was Chu Yang's own realization. However, Chu Yang's obsession from his previous life had suddenly vanished like smoke in thin air. It was just as Chu Yang had written this poem, heroes and heroines are also nothingness. Who wins and loses in the dreamy clouds? What's the point of this life or the previous life? Who's innocent since ancient times? After all, his previous life didn't exist anymore. Chapter 6:12. Chu Yang's figure flew on the main road. His heart calmed down after a long time. After that, they didn't encounter any more robberies. Instead, they saw several Jianghu people killing each other. The closer they got to the gathering place of the great clans, the more frequent such scenes became. Corpses were strewn all along the way. The chaos of the Jianghu had arrived. He pondered over the Oyu clan's 10,000 poisons evil scripture, and felt that he had gained some insights. It seemed that the 10,000 poisons evil scripture could be used. The first chapter of the 10,000 poisons evil scripture, Poison Evil Divine Skill. Chapter 2, All Poisons in the World. Chapter 3, Creating Poisons. Chapter 4, All Poisonous Insects in the World. Chapter 5, All Poisons in the World. Chapter 6, All Poisons in the World. In the fourth chapter, The World of Poisonous Insects, the names and images of the Poison Recovery Flood Dragon and the Lust Flood Dragon were listed, and there was also a detailed introduction. The lust poison of the Lust Dragon was one of the poisons that couldn't be cured. Sword Spirit wrinkled his brows in Chu Yang's mind. He sensed some abnormal fluctuations in Chu Yang's energy. So, he couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" "A book," Chu Yang said as he flipped through the book. "What book?" 10,000 Poisons Evil Scripture, 10,000 Poisons Evil Book. The Sword Spirit was startled. He then said, "Let me have a look." With a thought, the evil book of 10,000 poisons, which was full of strange techniques, entered the tribulation space. Inside the space, the Sword Spirit had a serious expression on his face as he flipped through the pages. Finally, he closed the book and heaved a deep sigh. Then, he closed his eyes as if he was thinking about something. A long while passed before the Sword Spirit finally opened his mouth and said, "So, it's this thing. This isn't called the 10,000 Poisons Evil Book. The correct name should be Compendium of World Poisons. Guide to Poisons in the World?" Chu Yang asked in puzzlement. "Not bad." Sword Spirit took a deep breath. The Guide to the World of Poisons doesn't only have the effect of poisoning people. This is the famous method of the poison doctor Wu Ju Cheng. Poison doctor Wu Ju Cheng? Chu Yang racked his brains, but he had never heard of this name. Poison doctor Wu Ju Cheng was one of the brothers of the master of Calamity Sword 40,000 years ago. The Wu clan was also one of the big clans that controlled Zhaizhong Tian 30,000 years ago. Back then, poison doctor Wu Juecheng had relied on his poison skills to roam the pugilistic world. He had never used his hands or weapons to kill and save people. With a smile, he caused the destruction of tens of thousands of people, beheaded the heroes, and left them helpless. His might shook the world. Back then, the most soul-stirring battle was when we fought the Heavenly Wolf sect of the upper three heavens. The Heavenly Wolf sect resisted stubbornly by relying on the dense forests and mountains. After Wu Ju Cheng arrived, he stood in the limelight and released a plague. The area within a radius of 3,000 miles became a dead zone. Be it man or beast, none survived. Other than being a master of poison, Wu Juecheng is also a divine physician. No matter what kind of injury it was, no matter what kind of poison it was, he could use poison to fight poison with poison and cure it without any repercussion. He is sometimes righteous and sometimes evil, doing things according to his heart's desire. He is truly a strange talent of his generation. However, after Wu Ju Cheng disappeared for 10,000 years, a new calamity swordmaster was born. The Wu clan declined and slowly disappeared from the upper three heavens. The guide to the world of poisons also never appeared in the Jianghu again. However, someone from the Wu clan escaped that year. I suspect that supreme martial artist Chen Feng, who once shook the world, is a descendant of Wu Ju Cheng. The sword spirit narrated the life stories of this legendary figure in detail. It seemed as if he was very familiar with them. And Chu Yang was fascinated as he listened. So that's how it is, Chu Yang silently sighed. However, the book in your hand is incomplete. It lacks the most important fight poison with poison. Moreover, that poison technique has clearly been modified. The sword spirit smiled strangely. Oh! Chu Yang immediately heard the strangeness in the sword spirit's tone. He asked, "How is it?" "Ha ha! Because this book was rewritten by me." The expression on the sword spirit's face couldn't be described. "I didn't expect to see this book again after 30,000 years. You rewrote it?" Chu Yang was genuinely shocked this time. "Yes, I obtained the guide to the world of poisons after the destruction of the Wu clan." The sword master of that time said, "This book will be immortalized in the hands of a ruler for hundreds of generations. But, in the hands of a person with evil intentions, it will torment the common people. I wanted to destroy it, but I couldn't bear to do so. So, I modified it and put it away. I deleted all the evil and cruel methods that violated human nature. I also reduced the power of the poison technique to the minimum. Then, I separated the book into 2 volumes. The book you're holding now is the first volume," the sword spirit said. "So, do you still remember it?" Chu Yang's eyes lit up. "I remember it. However, this kind of martial art is too dangerous. It's not easy to control it if other people practice it. Moreover, who will control the danger of this poison technique if you're no longer in this world?" The sword spirit looked at Chu Yang meaningfully. "There's no such thing as good or evil in this world. The so-called righteous sects don't lack sinister villains and ambitious fanatics. The so-called evil and crooked paths don't necessarily consist of devils who torment the common people. There are also great men and true heroes who emerge in an endless stream." Chu Yang insipidly said, "Moreover, you destroyed it at that time because you had already mastered the heavenly tribulation." "But, I haven't started yet." The sword spirit's eyes became serious. "You want to practice it? I have the heavenly tribulation divine technique. So, why would I practice this poison technique?" Chu Yang said, "But, I must know some of the methods to save people or to harm people. This will be beneficial to my future plans." The sword spirit pondered for a long while. Then, he said, "It's okay to let you know as long as you don't spread it out." "Well, I'll give you the complete guide to world poisons." Chu Yang was overjoyed. He said, "You have a lot of good things in your head. How about this? I'll give you a lot of paper and a pen. You can record everything in your head for me, okay? It's so troublesome to squeeze out at the last moment." The sword spirit became angry. He said, "I saw this thing and recalled my past memories. So, I remembered it. Do you think that I can take out anything? You don't have a medium. So, you can't recall my memories. What's the use of that? Moreover, can you learn my 10,000 years worth of memories even if I write them down? That's something that tens of thousands of people have to study for their entire lives to achieve. You're the greediest." Chu Yang touched his nose and forced a smile. This guy must have a lot of good things in his head. There will be many things suitable for my brothers to enhance their strength if I can dig them out. But where am I going to find so many mediums? Chu Yang thought as he looked at the sword spirit who was trying hard to recall. But his feet didn't stop moving. He climbed the mountain top. He saw a green grassland in front of him. The trees were lush, houses were continuous, and a stream of green water meandered around the periphery of the populated area. It was as if this picturesque village was surrounded by a sparkling and beautiful belt. I've arrived at the Mo clan. When Jiyu Duxing passed through this forest, he vaguely felt that something was wrong. The aura that was coming from the front was faintly oppressive. But he couldn't take a detour at this time. The Jiyu clan was about 200 miles away. This was the only way. If he took a detour, he would have to take a detour of several thousand miles. The enemy had chosen this time and terrain to attack. Jiyu Duxing steeled his heart and walked out in large strides. I can't take a detour. So, I'll kill my way through. He came out of the jungle and saw a man standing upright and unafraid at the intersection between the two mountains. The tassel of his long sword was fluttering in the wind on his shoulder. At the entrance of the gap between the two mountains, this person's figure was like a sharp sword. It was as if this sharp sword had split the two mountains apart. This man was tall and sturdy. His figure was tall and sturdy. His face was covered with curly hair. He looked like a black iron tower. He stood tall like a mountain on the road. There was a wide road on both sides of his body. But it didn't know why this man gave people the feeling that he was blocking the entire road. Not even a drop of water could trickle through. Brother Jiyu, it's been a long time, this man grinned and said indifferently when he saw Jiyu Duxing come out. He opened his shoulders, and a domineering aura suddenly gushed out. Tu Qian Hao. Brother Tu? Jiyu Duxing's body landed lightly. He stopped, and said with a cold expression, the scorching sun is high in the sky. Brother Tu must be in a good mood to bask in the sun. Do you have nothing better to do? Tu Qian Hao smiled and shook his head. Brother Jiyu, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Your attitude is very bad. Jiyu Duxing sneered and said without any trace of politeness, Tu Qian Hao, you're blocking my way. Don't tell me that you have good intentions. Tell me, what do you want to do today? Tu Qian Hao took a deep breath. He slowly removed the sheathed sword from his back, and said in a heavy tone, this too suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Brother Jiyu in the last battle. So, I have come here today to ask Brother Jiyu for advice. Jiyu Duxing took a step forward. His whole body was surrounded by a cold sword energy. His eyes slowly swept across the surroundings. He then shouted in a low voice, "You're alone?" The contempt in his tone wasn't concealed in the slightest. Tu Qian Hao snorted. He glared at him and said, I won't hide it from you. 20 people of our Tu clan have come this time. 21 people including me. Our purpose is to kill you. He, you have the means. Jiyu Duxing put on a fake smile and snorted, then, why haven't you called them out to fight? Why have you left the great young master here to wrangle with me? Tu Qian Hao's face turned red. He then said boldly, but I want to fight with you first before besieging you. A battle of life and death. It seemed as if his eyes were about to spurt out a raging fire. He then said in a heavy tone, I want to have a fair fight with you today. First, I'll kill you. Second, you'll kill me. I'll cut my own throat on the spot if anyone dares to fight before the battle of life and death is decided. Then, he turned around and shouted in a stern voice, Did you hear that? Get out here for me. 20 people came out from behind the mountain rock with several shua sounds. They then stood behind Tu Qian Hao. Tu Qian Hao's complexion was like iron. He then shouted in a stern voice, Whoever dares to fight before the outcome is decided will kill me with their own hand. Do you understand? This young master has been rampant, proud, despicable, and scheming in this lifetime. But no one has ever said that I have no backbone, and no one is allowed to say that my Tu clan has no backbone. Do you understand? Translator, Mr. Voltaire Xiao Jiyu had taken over Yu Laro's authority. He had become the one and only Yu Laro in the world. All the marriages in the world were in his hands. What? Brother, you're a rich second generation? A great master? You don't lack women? Very good. Then, you can try from today onwards. Do you still have women? This Yu Laro can guarantee that you won't even see a chrysanthemum flower. Big Mouth Parrot, The Postmodern Life of Yu Laro, book number 227-1796. Chapter 613. Yes. Young Master will win. 20 people of the two clans shouted at the same time. The two old men in embroidered robes in the front exposed a deeply worried look on their faces. Jiyu Duxing, are you relieved now? Tu Qian Hao turned around and looked at Jiyu Duxing with a burning gaze. He then shouted in a stern voice. The contempt on Jiyu Duxing's face slowly vanished, and was replaced by respect. It was the respect of a true martial artist. He became serious and said, Tu Qian Hao, why are you doing this? Tu Qian Hao smiled bleakly and indifferently said, my marrow was cleansed when I was born. I started to practice martial arts when I was 2 years old, and I started to practice sword when I was 3 years old. I was hailed as the #1 martial genius of the Tu clan in several hundred years when I was 7 years old. And, I also think that I'm very amazing, I'm very confident, and very conceited. I was very arrogant before you and I had a fight. I thought that other people were inferior to me, but you were ranked above me. So, I refused to accept it. But, I found out that I was wrong after I fought with you. He said in a low and deep voice, you shattered my dream, and made me realize who I am. But, you became my inner demon after that. I crazily practiced sword in order to defeat you. I wanted to defeat you in a fair and square one-on-one situation. I wouldn't have been able to reach the peak of martial arts even if I had lived on if I hadn't been able to do so. But, that's my lifelong pursuit. I might as well die if I were to declare that this road is hopeless. At least, I wouldn't have disgraced Tu Qian Hao by dying under your sword. Tu Qian Hao burst into loud laughter. He then shouted, Jiyu Duxing, do you understand my thoughts? Do you understand? Are you willing to fight with me? Jiyu Duxing's complexion became bleak like the autumn wind. He then said in a clear voice, I understand, and I can completely understand. Tu Qian Hao, I will fulfill your wish and fight with you. Tu Qian Hao laughed like thunder. He unsheathed his sword, and slashed it against the wind. It issued a buzzing sound, and thousands of sword-after images appeared in front of him. He then said in a loud voice, today is a battle of life and death. Jiyu Duxing, kill me if you have the ability, I don't need your respect. I only need your life. Don't worry, I won't show any mercy. Jiyu Duxing let out a long cry. The black dragon sword seemed to have a life of its own. With a clear cry, it automatically left the scabbard. With a flash of light in the air, it fell into Jiyu Duxing's hand. Even if I kill you, I will let you die in a fighting posture, Jiyu Duxing said in a deep voice. He raised his head and opened his eyes. Then, 2 beams of light shot out from his eyes. The black dragon sword's roar reverberated in the air for a long time. The sword in Tu Qian Hao's hand fiercely buzzed. Tu Qian Hao burst into loud laughter. Sword Emperor, I have indeed met the Sword Emperor in this life. With a loud roar, the muscles all over his body tightened. His entire body seemed to have swelled up and become even more powerful. Tu Qian Hao's face had turned red, and his eyes had shot out a feeling of extreme excitement. In fact, every pore of his entire body had been stimulated by this kind of happiness, and had expanded. The boundless fighting intent had thoroughly integrated into Tu Qian Hao's blood and soul. The lifeless sword in Tu Qian Hao's hand had already expressed its allegiance when the Sword Emperor had appeared. However, Tu Qian Hao could only feel his fighting intent boiling uncontrollably. Jiyu Duxing, come and fight. Jiyu Duxing let out a long roar, and his sword light crisscrossed. Tu Qian Hao laughed heartily, and flew up. Suddenly, thousands of sword lights whizzed out from all directions, and transformed into life-snatching sword energy. They then attacked Jiyu Duxing. The whistling sound of the sword wind suppressed the mournful northern wind of the mountain pass. Jiu Xing was dressed in black clothes. Tu Qianhao's sword light was flickering in and out of existence. The black dragon sword swept, flickered, stuck, and cut. A cold light burst out. He didn't yield to Tu Qianhao in the slightest. One of them was dressed in black clothes, and the other in black clothes. Two groups of sword lights were rolling over and over again. Later, only a group of resplendent light balls could be seen. But the figures of these two people couldn't be seen. Suddenly, the sound of sword lights colliding with each other resounded unceasingly. It sounded like the wind blowing on a lotus, and the rain hitting on a banana leaf. Then, only the whistling of sword energy could be heard. The sword lights were dazzling, but there was no collision. Awesome! Tu Qianhao burst into loud laughter. It seemed as if he had gone insane. Tu Qianhao had outperformed himself under the pressure of Jiu Xing's Sword Emperor. Tu Qianhao's slaughter spirit sword technique had been displayed to the extreme. Suddenly, it was like a violent storm. Suddenly, it was like a gentle breeze and drizzle. He only felt that the blood in his entire body was rushing at a rapid speed. His entire body was getting more and more excited. It was a kind of excitement that had almost reached an ethereal state. He had forgotten everything at this moment. He had forgotten that he was fighting. He had forgotten that he was Tu Qianhao. He had forgotten his own sword. He had forgotten everything in this world. He only asked for a fight. A fight to his heart's content. He didn't care about life or death. He felt very happy. It was the kind of unrestrained happiness of soaring through the clouds and dancing in the street. Therefore, his wild laughter soared to the sky. His roar soared to the sky. His tall and sturdy body leaped and flew like a madman. He was like an eagle soaring in the sky. He was like a dragon swimming in the sea. He was like a tiger roaring in the forest. Ha 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 ha. Tu Qianhao laughed crazily. He then roared to his heart's content, I can die in peace if I have to fight like this in this life. Jiu Xing was as calm as ice and snow under Tu Qianhao's crazy attacks. His eyes flickered with pity, hesitation, and indecisiveness. Kill? Or not to kill? The previous Tu Qianhao may have made people dislike him. But the current Tu Qianhao is worthy of anyone's respect. I would have killed myself on the spot in shame if I had shown mercy to him. I wouldn't have died in peace if I had been him. The only way to treat a respected opponent with respect is to display my full strength and fight with him. Any hesitation or mercy would have been a supreme humiliation to my opponent. Jiu Xing's eyes flashed. He then shouted, Brother Tu, be careful. The black dragon sword issued a long cry. It then jumped up. Little by little, streaks of cold light rolled out from the sword's body. The sword light was cold as it jumped and flickered. It was like a will-o'-the-wisp of the netherworld. It was unceasingly flickering. However, it was flickering with a cold murderous intention. Come on. Tu Qianhao roared. He crazily attacked. The sword light flickered, and drops of blood sparkled like fairies. They jumped in the bright and resplendent sword light, and then disappeared. Tu Qianhao laughed loudly. Jiu Xing sighed. The black dragon sword was already as firm as a rock. Tu Qianhao's laughter came to an abrupt end. His movements also came to an abrupt end. He calmly stood in the same place. The long sword was still in his right hand. The sword light was still flickering and rippling. He slowly lowered his head. He saw that half of the long sword was flickering with a gloomy and cold light on his chest. The tip of the sword had already pierced deeply into his heart. Tu Qianhao's face had a very strange expression as he looked at the long sword that had pierced deeply into his chest. It seemed as if he was reminiscing about this peculiar feeling. His face had a thoughtful look on it. Jiu Xing held the hilt of the sword firmly like a rock. His gaze deeply looked at Tu Qianhao's face. He then softly said, I used my full strength, and couldn't hold back. Tu Qianhao's face exposed a trace of a smile of understanding. He then heroically said, I wouldn't have died in peace if you hadn't used your full strength. Then, he lowered his eyes, and looked at the long sword in his chest. He was somewhat reluctant to part with it. He then said in a somewhat frustrated manner, Don't pull it out yet. All right. Jiyu Du Xing's eyes darkened. The people of the Tu clan angrily shouted, and suddenly rushed forward. Stop! Tu Qianhao stood upright and upright. He then angrily growled, the matter between the two of us isn't over yet. Who dares to come forward? His heart had already been pierced. So, he was dead for sure. However, his growl was still awe-inspiring. His domineering and arrogant aura was completely exposed. The 20 experts of the Tu clan stopped at the same time. They anxiously looked at their young lord. Their faces were full of anxiety. But, they also carried deep grief and powerlessness. Retreat. Tu Qianhao's voice was low and deep. But, it was firm and unquestionable. He then repeated, retreat. The 20 experts slowly retreated while holding their swords. Several of them had tears flickering in their eyes. Tu Qianhao didn't seem to feel anything. He closed his eyes, and then opened them again. He then looked at the white clouds floating in the distant sky. His eyes didn't seem to have the slightest bit of expression. But, they also seemed to be filled with a myriad of emotions. Do you know, Jiyu Du Xing? I, Tu Qianhao, could have become a swordsman. I could have moved unhindered in the heavens. I had this feeling that I could have done it. But, I've ruined my own future with my own hands now. I've ruined my own life. Tu Qianhao laughed in a hoarse voice. I'll always be below you even if I become a swordsman and an emperor-level expert. I'll never surpass you. And, we are people of the same era. Your achievements are far inferior to mine. Therefore, it's a shame for me to have my achievements suppressed by you guys. I, Tu Qianhao, don't want it. I, Tu Qianhao, wouldn't be Tu Qianhao if I wanted it. Tu Qianhao looked at Jiyu Du Xing with his sharp eyes. He then proudly said, I'm Tu Qianhao if I die like this. Jiyu Du Xing remained silent for a long time. Then, he gently nodded. He said, you're indeed qualified to be so proud. Tu Qianhao smiled. His face was covered with a beard. But, his smile gave Jiyu Du Xing a very pure and innocent feeling at this moment. In fact, it seemed as if he was a child who was showing off his little achievements. Naive and unaffected. I didn't want to die, Tu Qianhao slowly said, but, I joined the alliance organized by Oyu Du Xiao because of my hatred and obsession with you. And, I only wanted to kill you at first after I had entered. But, I suddenly became disheartened later on. Too selfish. Too unforthright. Each of those people was a talent. But, each of them was fighting and scheming against each other, that kind of environment. Tu Qianhao deeply sighed. Then, he clenched his teeth and cursed from the bottom of his heart, fucking hell, it suffocated me to death. He had used a lot of strength in this curse. In fact, it seemed as if he had used the strength of his heartbeat. Anyone who had heard it would have had the feeling that these words had come from the bottom of his heart. I have a headache. I'm going to get some medicine. Chapter 614. Especially when I learned that you had already become a sword emperor. Tu Qianhao laughed in a desolate manner. Heh. At that moment, I suddenly felt disheartened. I said that I would kill Jiyu Du Xing at that time. The Black Devil said that he was already a sword emperor. So, what grade of king level were you? He had imitated the tone of the young Black Devil when he had said these words. His gloominess and ridicule had been imitated to perfection. This was enough to show how much these words had stimulated him at that time. I thought at that time, I can't catch up with you. I can't kill you. But, I will be killed by you. I will die in your hands. So, it should be okay, right? Tu Qianhao snorted, I, Tu Qianhao, will die. But, I'm 1,000 times better than those bastards who only speak ill of people behind their backs. They don't dare to face their enemies head-on. I'm 10,000 times prouder than them. Tu Qianhao roared. This sentence was clearly too loud. His mood fluctuated violently. The sword wound on his chest had caused him to spurt out blood. Jiyu Du Xing's expression shook. He used his finger as a knife, and poked twice on Tu Qianhao's chest to stop the bleeding. Tu Qianhao's complexion turned as pale as gold paper. He smiled warmly, don't bother. I've come here today to seek death. Do you really think that a 7th grade king-level expert like me can defeat a sword emperor? Jiyu Duxing was speechless. He sighed and said in disappointment and frustration, "You didn't have to die." Tu Qianhao smiled freely. Then, he suddenly said, "But, I have boundless confidence now. I may not necessarily lose if I have the opportunity to fight with you next time. That's because I suddenly comprehended my own way of the sword when I was at death's door. I comprehended my own sword emperor realm." Tu Qianhao's complexion was solemn and proud. He gasped for breath and said, "I'll be a sword emperor after today if I don't die." Jiyu Duxing knitted his brows. He was somewhat worried as he looked at Tu Qianhao's increasingly pale complexion. Tu Qianhao choked and coughed. He then said in a somewhat strange manner of self-mockery, "Do you know when I had this kind of comprehension?" "When?" Jiyu Duxing could not help but agree. "When the tip of your sword pierced my heart, a boundless feeling of death suddenly welled up. But, I comprehended my own way of the sword at that time." Tu Qianhao smiled brightly. "When the tip of your sword pierced my heart, I unexpectedly made a breakthrough at that time." Ha ha ha. It's so damn funny. What a fucking joke. This is really fucking funny. Jiyu Duxing couldn't help but be speechless. He didn't know what to say. The tip of the enemy's sword pierced his heart, and he broke through at that time. Such a fortuitous encounter would make anyone speechless. So it turns out that the greatest breakthroughs can only be achieved when one is on the brink of death. Tu Qianhao finished laughing. Then, he sighed in disappointment and frustration. Then, he muttered, "I remember that senior once said that the aura of death is the precursor to a breakthrough. I've always been puzzled, but today, I finally understand." Heh. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at Jiyu Duxing with a burning gaze. He said, "Jiyu Duxing, although I'm dead, I can't waste my sword Dao. Please, do me a favor." "What favor?" Jiyu Duxing had already faintly guessed it. "Only you can understand my state of mind at that time. So, I'll tell you my sword Dao." Tu Qianhao's pupils suddenly opened wide, and he exposed a fanatical look. "Jiyu Duxing, I hope that my sword Dao will be famous throughout the world. Its might will shake the heavens. I beg you to help me." Me? Jiyu Duxing had already guessed it. But, he still felt his whole body shake when he heard Tu Qianhao say it himself. "I can call the experts of your clan over, and you can impart it to them." Jiyu Duxing said indifferently. "No." Tu Qianhao coldly snorted, "They don't deserve it. They can't understand it. Jiyu Duxing, don't waste my life." Tu Qianhao didn't wait for Jiyu Duxing to reply after he finished speaking. Instead, he said, "My realization is called forget emotions. Forget everything. Forget yourself. Forget the engraving. Forget the sky. Forget the earth. Forget the emotions. Forget everything. This is the highest realm of my engraving technique." Tu Qianhao said with difficulty, "You listen carefully." Then, he started to speak without caring about anything else. Jiyu Duxing also gradually became immersed in his voice as he narrated little by little. Jiyu Duxing's cultivation and temperament allowed him to feel the power of this realm almost as soon as he heard the first sentence. Therefore, he gathered all his spirit, and tried hard to listen to every sentence and every word. Tu Qianhao was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Perhaps, he would die before he could finish speaking. He would only have this opportunity in his life to listen to this realization that he had exchanged his life for. Not only would he be letting himself down if he couldn't remember it, but he would also be letting Tu Qianhao down. Perhaps, Tu Qianhao would die with his eyes wide open if he couldn't remember it. The two men stood face to face. A long sword was flickering with a cold light between them. The hilt of the long sword was motionless in Jiyu Duxing's hand like a 10,000-year-old boulder. The tip of the long sword was still slowly soaking in blood on Tu Qianhao's chest. Forget emotions. Chu Yong would have sighed if he were here. He wouldn't have been able to describe the feeling in his heart. Tu Qianhao had become one of the 12 influential figures of the three heavens in his previous life. He had relied on his unruffled sword. Tu Qianhao had comprehended unruffled sword on the basis of the unruffled swordsmanship. Tu Chen Hao had once rushed to the peak of the three heavens by relying on these two words: unruffled swordsmanship. He had slaughtered thousands of heroes, and had laughed proudly in the Jianghu with his sword. This was Tu Chen Hao. Tu Chen Hao had gathered all his comprehensions into a book in the year of Chu Yang's death. Then, he had prepared to march into the upper three heavens. Chu Yang didn't know whether he would succeed or not. However, he knew that Tu Chen Hao had written a book named Forget Emotions' Heavenly Book. Now, Tu Chen Hao had comprehended Forget Emotions' sword technique. This was undoubtedly 20 years earlier than in his previous life. However, it was worth lamenting that this Forget Emotions sword technique could no longer be used by Tu Chen Hao, the inventor. The Forget Emotions Heavenly Book that had once shocked the entire upper three heavens would no longer appear in the upper three heavens in this life. This was also a kind of regret. In his previous life, there were 12 influential figures in the three heavens. Meng Luo, Cheong Hua, Tian Rui, Meng Luo, 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 Meng Now. The life of this Black Saber Chen Hao evil duke had come to an end ahead of time. After a long time. Do you remember it? Tu Chen Hao's voice was already weak. However, he still asked urgently. Got it. Jiyu Duxing took a deep breath. You read it out loud for me to hear. Tu Chen Hao's pupils had already somewhat dilated. He then muttered, will anyone think of me, Tu Chen Hao, when they use the unruffled swordsmanship in the future? Unruffled sword. Jiyu Duxing knew that Tu Chen Hao was worried. So, he softly and clearly recited the sword scripture of unruffled emotions. Tu Chen Hao's face exposed a strange loneliness. It seemed as if he hadn't heard what Jiyu Duxing had said. He merely tilted his head slightly as if he was listening to something. Then, he muttered, so boring. What? Jiyu Duxing hastily asked. But, he didn't hear a response. He looked carefully, and saw that Tu Chen Hao's body was standing upright. His eyes were full of loneliness. He was no longer breathing. The founder of the unruffled swordsmanship was one of the 12 influential figures. But, his last words before his death were so boring. This was a hero of his generation who had rushed into the Jianghu. He had lived a colorful life. But, his last words were so boring. No one knew. How was it boring? Why was it boring? Perhaps, he had a new realization at the last moment. However, this was something that no one knew. Jiyu Duxing sighed. He gently pulled out his long sword. The black dragon sword left Tu Chen Hao's chest like a pool of clear water. Jiyu Duxing retreated 2 steps. He then looked at Tu Chen Hao with rapt attention. He held his sword with both hands, and bowed with a solemn expression. Then, he earnestly said, Brother Tu, you can go in peace. The unruffled swordsmanship will inevitably blossom in the Jianghu. Tu Chen Hao's body was still standing tall. His face was full of curly beard, and it was trembling in the bleak wind. His eyes were empty, and contained endless arrogance. But, they were also lonely and desolate. Moreover, they were also full of ridicule. It seemed as if he was ridiculing his own life for being so ridiculous and helpless. But, it also seemed as if he was ridiculing the millions of people who were still alive in the world for being so boring, stupid, and vulgar. His hand naturally drooped down. He still held the sword in his hand. The sword light was flickering indeterminately. He was standing like this. He was already dead. He was just a corpse. But, he still had a heroic spirit of a man who could hold back 10,000 men. It was an awe-inspiring demeanor. Blood dripped down from Jiyu Duxing's black dragon sword. It reluctantly slid down along the sword's tip, and dripped into the dust. It splashed lightly, and the dust curled up and scattered. This is the Jianghu. Jiyu Duxing let out a long breath. He had been suppressing this breath for a long time. But, he felt a sense of disappointment and frustration when he finally let it out. There are so many rights and wrongs in the Jianghu. But, how can there be so many should and shouldn't? Life and death, who can say for sure whether it's innocent or calm? He sighed. He then retreated a dozen steps, and stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He earnestly looked at Tu Qian Hao, who had already lost his breath. The look in his eyes was extremely complicated. He then softly said, "Brother Tu, the road to the underworld is long. Take care on the way, young lord." 20 experts of the Tu clan cried out in grief. They rushed forward, and threw themselves in front of Tu Qian Hao. But, they suddenly discovered that Tu Qian Hao was no longer breathing. He was completely dead. They couldn't help but scream wildly. They turned around like a whirlwind, and firmly looked at Jiyu Duxing. They then said in grief and indignation, "Surnamed Jiyu, you dared to kill our young lord." Jiyu Duxing coldly looked at them. He saw that the one who had spoken was an old man with sideburns. He had tears in his eyes, and was angrily looking at Jiyu Duxing. Jiyu Duxing couldn't help but coldly say, "What? Didn't Brother Tu give you an explanation before this?" Tu Qian Hao had calculated everything. He had even calculated his own death. So, how could he not give an explanation to these people? Chapter 6:15. Sure enough, there was some hesitation on the faces of several people as soon as Jiyu Duxing said these words. They clearly remembered what Tu Qian Hao had said. The bearded old man's eyes flickered. He then shouted, "Even if the young lord has given us instructions, this old man will still kill this bastard to avenge the young lord. The young lord can't die in vain." The 5 people clamored as soon as he shouted, "Yes, the young lord can't die in vain. The young lord is dead now. What face do we have to return to our clans if we don't kill the murderer Jiyu Duxing? We might as well kill ourselves here." The atmosphere became tense as soon as these people made a ruckus. Jiyu Duxing heaved a long sigh. He turned his hand, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He then sighed and said, "Brother Tu, your heroic spirit isn't far away. Watch me get rid of this evil slave for you." Tu Qian Hao's eyes were still empty and lonely. But, the ridicule in them seemed to have intensified. Jiyu Duxing knew that Tu Qian Hao had shared his last realization with him. So, he certainly didn't wish for him to die. Moreover, he must have made some arrangements before this. Jiyu Duxing didn't know what those arrangements were. But, they were certainly related to him. So, he was definitely not his enemy. Therefore, these people obviously had ulterior motives. Tu Qian Hao wouldn't have allowed them to act so presumptuously if he were alive. Tu Qian Hao would have killed them all given his strong personality. Tu Qian Hao is dead now. But, I, Jiyu Duxing, am still here. Tu Qian Hao, I, Jiyu Duxing, have already recognized you as a friend when you were on the verge of death. We have always been enemies. But, that doesn't prevent me from recognizing you as a friend. I know your habits, and I also know your character. And, I also know what you would have done if you were still here. I'll do it for you." Jiyu Duxing's body was dragged like a javelin. He muttered, "Brother Tu, I can see the loneliness in your eyes. And, I can also see your loneliness. Now, I will use my solitary sword technique to combine with your unruffled sword technique. You and I will join forces to kill these scums." His voice hadn't faded when the sound of a golden blade cutting through the air was heard behind him. A trace of anger floated across Jiyu Duxing's frosty face. He straightened his body and floated forward. However, his long sword silently flew out from under his armpit. It was silent, but as fast as lightning. With this sword, his demeanor was as if he was standing at the peak of solitude, looking down on the world with disdain. It was the sword of solitude that Jiyu Duxing had comprehended during this period of time. With one strike, the world was in solitude. The Sword Emperor's signature move. Jiyu Duxing said in a low voice, "Tu Qian Hao, did you see that? This is the Sword of Solitude." A king-level expert was stabbed in the chest with a puff sound. His body swayed, and he fell to the ground. Jiyu Duxing's sword pierced right into his heart without even looking back. But, a living human life had already been reduced to nothingness. The sound of the wind rose again. Jiyu Duxing leaned back and gently flipped into the air. He recited, a sword across the sky towards the peak. Then, he turned around and slashed out with his sword with a lonely and bleak expression on his face. He said indifferently, life and death, victory and defeat are all gone in a flash. He rushed forward, his green robe fluttering in the wind. He exuded a sense of desolation as he asked, "Where can I find a soulmate in the world?" He turned around, leaving behind dozens of after-images. His long sword instantly turned into a screen of light. He said indifferently, "When you want to look back, you've already forgotten your feelings." Clang. Jiyu Du Xing sheathed his sword and said indifferently, "Brother Tu, this is my sword of solitude. It's the last move. Half of it is the sword of solitude, and the other half is the sword of oblivion. Please advise me." 4 consecutive puff sounds were heard. The 4 king-level experts behind Jiyu Du Xing fell to the ground one after another. 2 of them died on their throats, and the other 2 died on their chest. Everyone who hadn't had time to attack felt dazzled before their eyes. It seemed as if Jiyu Du Xing was performing a light and lonely dance of solitude. The bleak mood hadn't disappeared yet, but the corpses of the 5 king-level experts who had participated in the attack were already lying on the ground. But Jiyu Du Xing's green robe wasn't stained with blood. A sword across the sky towards the peak. Life and death, victory and defeat are all gone in a flash. Where can I find a soulmate in the world? When you want to look back, you've already forgotten your feelings. Jiyu Du Xing heaved a long sigh of relief. The sword path problem that had been troubling him for nearly 10 days had finally been solved today. This made him feel that the vital energy in his body was showing signs of restlessness. It seemed as if it was slowly becoming sharper and sharper. Jiyu Du Xing had a feeling, it seems as if the vital energy in my body is slowly transforming into vital energy. Moreover, the vital energy in my body has been constantly replenished with the continuous high-pressure training. Moreover, I've had a faint feeling of restlessness in addition to my recent realizations and breakthroughs. This gave Jiyu Du Xing a clear feeling, my cultivation has slowly been pushed to the peak of a first-grade sword emperor. And, I'm slowly advancing towards a second-grade sword emperor. Moreover, there's no bottleneck. I'm just waiting for the right conditions. And, I'll become a second-grade sword trial one day. This feeling was baseless, but it really existed. The 2 4th-grade emperor-level experts of the Tu clan were about to rush forward. But, the imposing aura of Jiyu Du Xing's sword trial suddenly climbed to the peak at this time, and suddenly spread out. A formless storm of swords suddenly spread out in all directions. The sword energy was like an emperor of a generation descending to the world. The sword emperor couldn't be blasphemed. The sword supremacy couldn't be violated. The 2 4th-grade emperor-level experts' swords suddenly emitted a clang. A loud and clear sword sound rang out. It seemed as if the swords were struggling to break free from their control. They were the kings of freedom. The dignified 4th-grade emperor-level experts were almost unable to control their swords. In fact, they almost flew out of their hands. They couldn't help but turn pale with fright. Then, they fled from the side as if they were fleeing for their lives. Jiyu Du Xing clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly turned around. The look in his eyes was very strange. There was recollection, nostalgia, contemplation, and frustration. But, it seemed as if there was nothing in his eyes if one looked carefully. It was an empty void. Everyone on the opposite side suddenly trembled from head to toe as soon as they came into contact with his eyes. Jiyu Du Xing's imposing aura seemed to have changed completely at this moment. His previous sharp and indomitable imposing aura had completely changed. It had changed into half loneliness, and half frustration, half loneliness, and half oblivion. His upright figure gave people the feeling that he was standing at the top of the world. However, he had forgotten everything. He had forgotten all the living things in the world. Oblivion's solitary guest. Yes, Jiyu Du Xing had suddenly comprehended the word oblivion in Tu Qian Hao's oblivion sword scripture when the sword energy had been running rampant in his body. When he said the last sentence, "When I want to look back, I've already forgotten my feelings," and when he wielded his sword, Jiyu Du Xing suddenly fused the 2 mental cultivation methods together as if he was possessed by some supernatural force. This had caused the vital energy in his body to go berserk and transform into sword energy. He had truly comprehended it at this critical moment. Jiyu Du Xing slowly turned around. His eyes were like lightning, and his gaze was like a sword. He looked at the two fourth-grade Emperor-level experts in silence. He was only a first-grade sword emperor. But the invisible imposing aura that he was emitting at this moment had suppressed the two fourth-grade Emperor-level experts and 13 King-level expert. The two Emperor-level experts were obviously 3 grades higher than him in cultivation. But they couldn't help but feel timid in their hearts under his thunder-like gaze. Their complexions couldn't help but change. Their feet involuntarily retreated step by step. Jiyu Du Xing was merely clasping his hands behind his back. But the two of them seemed as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Cold sweat had seeped out of their foreheads when they had retreated 5 steps. They felt a chill all over their bodies. Both of them had a clear feeling, life and death aren't in my hands at this moment. It all depends on the thoughts of the sword judge opposite me. If he wants me to live, I'll live. If he wants me to die, I'll be consigned to eternal damnation. Jiyu Du Xing looked at them with cold and clear eyes. He then indifferently said, Tu Qian Hao was here before I came. How did he explain it to you? His voice was like the judgment of the gods. It couldn't be questioned. It couldn't be resisted. The two Emperor-level experts suddenly felt as if a heavy mountain was pressing down on their head. Moreover, this mountain was a mountain of swords. The curly-bearded old man's pupils contracted. He firmly shut his mouth. But the other king-level expert in the crowd said, Master once told us that if he dies by your sword today, we should return to the clan and inform the clan lord that the two clan won't come out of seclusion until what? Jiyu Du Xing's eyes turned sharp. Shut up. The curly-bearded old man finally struggled to shout. He then shouted loudly, Jiyu Du Xing, give me your life. The sword light flashed. It broke through the blockade of Jiyu Du Xing's imposing aura and rushed forward like a mad tiger. Jiyu Du Xing's eyes flashed. He exposed a trace of astonishment. He coldly snorted, get lost. The long sword seemed to fly out casually. But it was the essence of his solitary, unruffled sword. Now, he needed to establish his power and shock everyone in one fell swoop. The sword light flashed high up in the sky like a bolt of lightning. The curly-bearded old man had just shouted one word when he suddenly shut his mouth. His face exposed a look of panic and despair. The next moment, his big head rolled down from his neck, fell on the ground, and rolled all the way. It rolled to Tu Qian Hao's feet, and finally stopped. It seemed as if he had done something wrong, and was prostrating himself in front of his young lord to admit his mistake. The other Emperor-level expert was about to attack as well. But then, he saw this scene. And the courage that he had just mustered disappeared without a trace. He didn't step forward. Instead, he quietly drew back 2 steps. Continue. Jiyu Du Xing indifferently said, until what? Young lord. Until the master of Calamity Sword changes the dynasty. Then, he will appear in Jianghu again. He lowered his head after he finished speaking. His forehead was full of sweat. Jiyu Du Xing exhaled. He couldn't help but raise his head. A long time passed. Then, he silently said, you guys go. I hope that you can bring these words to your 2 clans, decision-makers. Yes. That king-level expert seemed to want to say something. But he restrained himself and lowered his head. What do you want to say? Jiyu Du Xing indifferently asked. I want to. That king-level expert suddenly mustered his courage and loudly shouted, we weren't your match today. You and the young lord were heroes. But the young lord died in your hands after all. Our 2 clan will never forget this enmity and hatred. We will look for you one day and ask you to pay for today's blood debt. Jiyu Du Xing was startled. Then, he happily laughed out loud. He said in a gratified manner, the 2 clan is indeed a hot-blooded man. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.